you don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion to take on my head. Look at better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the third part of What If Deku Enters Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of Raven 716 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. After a day of school being closed, it resumed the next day. Students allowed to return back, well, most of them. Green Eyes noticed the absence of the two sisters the moment he stepped foot on campus. He thought they'd be here, having gone by their place to get them. After all, he was assigned to help them. So going to their place to pick them up for school was part of it. When he went, knocked on the door, even rang their bell, got no answer at all. Which was odd. What was odder, he didn't hear a single voice, especially from May, who no doubt would have known of his presence, would swung that door open, taking it off its hinges, and came flying at him, either picking him up or throwing her arms around him, squeezing him like toothpaste, before yanking him inside and dragging him to the table, firing off with her mouth on many things. April was correct, she was rather active and excitable, almost like a child, he thought. But that wasn't the case, that didn't happen. There was no response. He even tried calling April. She had given him his number on the first day. On their way to school, why he wasn't sure. April didn't pick up. After 3 times of calling, left it alone. Turned and headed to school. He didn't want to be late, and thought they'd both maybe left and would be here. To find out that wasn't the case, he began to worry. Was the first day too much for them? No, that wouldn't make sense after what May said, and April informed him. They've faced dangers before, foot ninjas, yeah. So facing dangers wasn't something new. Then again, these dangers had quirks, something they probably never encountered. Or was May still injured? Had she not recovered fully? It became so bad, April had to take her to the emergency. From what Uraraka and Ida told him, both sisters left a bit after slipping out. May's shoulder did look pretty bad. Why did Shigaraki's quirk have that effect on her? She grabbed quickly and nearly cradled it. The same when she shielded everyone when Kurogiri attacked them. Cradled her sides. Izuku could still hear her cries. Stopped suddenly. The pain she was in, was it because of him? Uraraka told him. May flew off when she found out that he wasn't present. The girl just flew off, dropped herself down before him and the others, shielding them against the shockwaves of power being exchanged between All Might and Namu. That clearly was more than she could handle, but managed to uphold it. She even smiled through it all. Her words that came from her lips he could still remember. They were directed at him, pitted his stomach. No wonder he pushed off after wrath to her. Reflect. What was that she did? Whatever it was, cleared and protect all them from the powerful shockwaves. April had to have taken her to get medical attention. It only made sense. Even so, Izuku's mind whirled. She would have ... he should have called her yesterday. Actually, he was waiting for April to call with May on the end or in the background, asking if he could give her a tour that she clearly wanted, which he wouldn't have minded, but he didn't get such a call. A knot tightened in his stomach. Where could they be? Entering school, made his way to class. He noticed a few things the moment he entered. Everyone was discussing their appearance on the news from the attack at UJS. Everyone seemed excited. Quite a few chairs remained empty. 6 to be exact. 2 though he paid more attention to than the other 4. Guess the Hamados weren't here either. The sisters weren't here. Maybe, just maybe, they might be running late. His stomach dropped again. What's going on? He mused to himself. They were only in class and school for 1 day and now eyes downcast to the floor. Mumbled, I didn't do a good job. Sighed and took his seat. With the sisters still on his mind, he remembered something. Reaching for his backpack, unzipped it and took out May's purple container. Cleaned, the least he could do, and empty. No one was able to enjoy her welcome gift. He had a feeling even if she saw the condition, the treats, it might upset her, but she'd still want to share it with everyone. Yeah, a small smile tugged on his face. She'd do that with April in the back, eye rolling and most likely giving him a nudge, followed by an internal snicker towards her younger sister. The thought made him lightly chuckle for a moment that quickly dropped. He hoped they'd come soon. Hopefully, everyone. Ida's authoritative voice boomed throughout the class, commanding everyone's attention as he stood in the front. Warning, homeroom is about to begin. Stop talking and take your seats. Which everyone was, other than Ida himself. Something Kaminari pointed out, amused. We're already in our seats. You're the only one who's not. Realizing this, Ida stiffened and quickly sat down. Dang it, he grumbled, nerved. Don't sweat it, Yurikara assured him. Yet, it seemed to do little, so she changed to another topic, looking around, eyes landing on the seat that belonged to April. Leaned over to Ida. Hey, she whispered. April and her sister aren't here. Hearing her, Ida quickly glanced around, noticing the empty seats of the two American sisters and also the Hamato sons. None of them were present. Momo was here, but not the brothers. Izuku was here, but not the sisters. Strange, he said, pushing up his glasses. I assumed they would have been here by now. From what April and Izuku informed us, he is their escort for the time being. To not see them with him is odd. Yurikara agreed. April did leave right after the villains came. She informed him. I know her sister was a bit injured. Really? Idia was a bit surprised. Turned back to her. She nodded slowly. Yeah, I called April that night. She said May's doing okay. Still a bit sore, but okay. I'm surprised considering what May kept saying, how they have training already. It was puzzling. Yurikara and Ida weren't the only ones wondering about the missing students. Their heterochromia eyes noticed before the others, though kept their lips silent. But not his mind. That begged the question where the Hamatos could be. Their father did show up with the other teachers and pro-heroes. Shoto hadn't gotten a chance to see Yoshi in action, but what he did see on his way back to the rest of the class, villains laid out cold, and the man standing there without a single mark or scratch on him. Not to mention he was completely calm and composed. No sign of exertion. It was both awing as it was trembling. The Hamatos, a family that many though were growing, a family that the four sons of the family wasn't only thing upon his mind. There was something else Shoto needed to do, and if they came he'd be able to. I hope what I said, Momo laden quietly, lifted her eyes slightly from the book she was reading. At the empty seat before and the other three remaining empty seats. He's their father. She set the book down for a moment, in thought. After the incident at USJ, she had a feeling the moment she saw Splinter, the look in the man's eyes was like heated steel. Even his words, she happened to overhear. He was furious despite his calm demeanor and left in such a hurry. That spoke volumes. Volumes that she hoped to lower and the man would hear. It was the reason she went over to his family's home and addressed him personally. By the look of it and packed boxes she saw the moment she arrived. Not to mention the look in the brothers told her everything. They were going to leave. It was her duty to make sure they would. After all, it was their first time in an actual school. And it seemed even for a brief moment they enjoyed it. So hopefully her words had some effect. There was still time for them arrive, before their teacher, who hadn't arrived. Everyone was informed of their injuries, Aizawa's injuries, so it was obviously they would be having a new face. Rocking back in her, Mina went back too far. Luckily Tsuyu, who sat behind her, stopped. She completely did. Hey Tsu, so who do you think is gonna teach class today? Nina asked. Tsuyu gave it a thought with a finger on her lip. No idea, Mr. Aizawa is still in the hospital, recovering from his injuries. The door opened and a small grunt followed. All heads and eyes turned surprised seeing Aizawa standing there, covered full face and it seemed body in bandages. His hair and eyes the only part of him that showed. Good morning class, he greeted everyone. Ignoring their surprised reaction, Aizawa walked more so limped in and stood behind the podium. Idia expressed his gladness in seeing him well, while Yurikara expressed her concern. My well-being is irrelevant. What's important is that your fight isn't over yet. A misconception a few in class took, believing the man meant they might still have to fight. I mean the sports festival. Aizawa clears up. It's about to start. Aw, why did you scare us like that? Most of the class shouted. Aizawa let it roll off. The class kept going in unison. The sports festival. Many became pumped. Alright, let's go kick some ass. Kirishima shouted, to be hushed and shoved in the face by Kaminari. Quickly asked a question. Wait a second. Is it wise to have the sports festival so soon? Gyro added. After the villains snuck inside, more concerned question come out. Expression their simmering worries and minor fears on the event, though they were excited about it. Hearing them, Aizawa settles them. Apparently the admiration believes this is a good way to show the threat has been handled. He explains, the school is safer than ever, plus they're beefing up security compared to past years. This even is a huge opportunity for all students at UA. It's nothing we can cancel because of a few villains. Minoru freaks. I'm sorry, but why not? It's just a sports festival. Surprised Izuku turns around to him. Minta, don't you know how important this competition is? Of course I do, I just don't want to get murder. Iwaza kept talking. Our sports festival is one of the most watched events in the entire world. In the past everyone obsessed over the Olympics, but them quirks started appearing. Now the Olympics have been reduced in terms of scale and viewership. For anyone who cares about competition, there's only one tournament that matters. UA Sports Festival. That's right, Momo directs to Minoru. Top heroes will be watching. This is where you get scouted. Minoru gave a side comment. Sure, unless you're dead. More explanations was given. Those who graduate there many join agencies as psychics. The more talk and information about it rose the mood of everyone. Their excitement was on the rise for those who choose to show it. Iwaza added what his students said. It's true, joining of famous hero agencies greatly can garner your experience and popularity. That's why the festival matters. If you want to go pro one day, this event can open a path for you. 1 chance a year, 3 chances in a lifetime. No aspiring hero can afford to miss this festival. That means you better not slack off in your training. Everyone agreed. Class was dismissed for lunch, and during lunch the students eagerly talked about the upcoming sports festival. That many couldn't wait for it to be here to show off their quirks and skills. Pro heroes alike would be ... The thought was pumping. Everyone had to bring their A game. This was the big times in some way. And a certain brown-haired individual was more pumped and excited than anyone in class. With a fist thrusted up and fearsome voice and face, Yurikara was ready. Deku, Ida. They turned to her, finding a dark and if not serious game face on, shocking them both with what seemed to a battle pink-like aura around her. Let's do our best in the sports festival. Yurikara, Izuku pointed out nervously. What happened to your face? Mina jumped in at Yurikara's sudden change. Seriously, what's up? You're totally like the most laid-back girl ever. Minoru, standing next to Tsayu, was about to say the dirty thought that came to his mind from words Mina, to be silenced by a smack from Tsayu's tongue. Yurikara kept going, keeping her fist thrusted up, shouting and declaring to everyone she was going to give it her all, rallying everyone in class who joined in. She shouted her declaration again a few more times, though not with everyone, as a few started to worry, question if she was all right. Once she settled down and ready for lunch, Yurikara, Izuku, and Ida left to enjoy the rest of their lunch. Walking through the halls, Izuku asked her for reason as to why she wanted to be a hero and attend the school. The question was a slight surprise, but she answered it. Rather slightly flustered, her reason was for money. She wanted to make money, surprising her friends, but they understood when she further told them the reason behind it was to help her parents due to their struggling construction business. Believing it was silly, Izuku and Ida assured her it was admirable. With that question out the way, another was brought up. Say, Deku. Yurikara turned to him. He gives her his attention. April and her sister, do you know ... Her eyes drop a bit. They are. He jilted a bit. She kept going. I mean, I know they're fine. I called and talked with April yesterday afternoon, asking if everything was all right. I'm just surprised they aren't here. Aren't they supposed to be with you and stuff? Before Izuku could say something, Ida jumps in. Yes, it is quite unusual really. I mean, the idea of them missing. From the looks of it, I'd say April isn't the type who would skip out of school. Though I have been told Americans can be rather delinquent when it comes to their education. Consider their rating and education. What a way to show his concern. Izuku wasn't sure really how to answer Ida's question and explanation. Just as he opened his mouth to answer, Ida kept going. I'm not saying the two sisters have low grades or anything. I mean, the fact they are sisters is still ... He paused for a moment, giving it some thought, thinking about what April told them, shrugged and kept going. They aren't here. Have you been relieved of your duties with them? They've only been in school for 1 day. I highly doubt they know their way around here yet. The youngest already demonstrated that to us. The whole class. How could anyone forget? May was rather slippery. Izuku had made a mental note of her trailing. His friends finished, waited for him answer. Swallowing, Izuku wasn't sure what to say, since he didn't really have much an answer himself. I'm not, he said lowly. I went by this morning to get them, but there was no answer. I thought they'd be here already. Ida and Yurikara look at each other, both with concern and confusion on their faces. Are you sure? Ida asked to be sure. Izuku nods slowly. I thought, Yurikara pondered. It couldn't have been because of what happened at USJ. I thought they've faced villains before. I know those 4 brothers, their dad was upset and stuff. Took them away instantly. But April and May, they're not really under his care. I hope they come soon. It would be bummer if they miss out on the sports festival. It would be great to see them in action. Especially April. You said you had her number. Ida brings up. She nods. Then maybe we should all give her a call or something to see. It would be ashamed if they missed the event. Or we could go by later today after school and check up on them. Izuku couldn't agree more. Yeah, maybe. Young Midoriya. All Might's valiant voice boomed across the halls. Suddenly appeared before the 3 friends. Large smile on and everything. This surprised the students. Asked Izuku if he wanted to have lunch with him. Accepting his offer, Izuku goes with him, leaving his friends to see what the hero wanted. With just the two of them, All Might takes Izuku to the teacher's lounge to discuss an important matter, one that would push Izuku further. And he wasn't the only one either. In a disclosed location, a slim figure dressed in all-white lab coat sat before a large monitor screen, their fingers busy at work typing, their sharp illustrious eyes taking every ounce of data that appeared on screen. It was as they thought, clench their jaw. How infuriating. What a disgrace, it was their fault after all. Taking them away. It only made sense they'd be at this level. When they should have been higher. If they had remained with them, they would have been great, wonderful. Not this mediocre, this impudent excuse of FUNN. Catching their rising anger, stopped, inhaled and released a slow breath. How unprofessional. Running a hand over their matching hair color. They too had texture and everything. Though unlike them, theirs was shorter. Long hair was nothing but a weight of the past. A past they would prove. They were still stopping their typing fingers. Raise one and press a button, and picture came up. An old one, years ago, when the world, life was simple and happy. When the two of them were even. When loved wasn't how long ago. Their eyes still on the old photo. Those two small innocent smiles. Their dark green eyes that beamed with sweetness and silliness. That blonde hair like the sun tied up into two pigtails. Everything matched their personality. That round face their daughter had inherited. The daughter looked nearly identical to them in more ways than one. How sickening. Enough. Pressing the button again rids the screen of the photo. Now was not the time to remain in the past. Not when they had more pressing matters on their mind. They needed to make sure they were pushed. After all these years, a small smile curled on their lips. Yes, they would push them beyond. They would ignite and showcase the power that was given to them. After all, it was the sports festival. Everyone needed to bring their all. Luckily, they had that covered. That push. Indeed, that push. Returning back to typing, a silhouette slipped in and crossed the room over to them. A hand raised, dropped the bag they had been carrying. Acknowledging their presence, earned a sigh of annoyance from the other. The figure just ignored them. The feeling was mutual, not that it mattered. Lifting their silver eyes to the monitor, read the complex information. Sighing, they knew what it meant. Groaning with a wicked smirk, this was going to be fun indeed. They could hardly wait. The sports festival. It was nearly here. 2 weeks to get prepared. Everyone had. All eyes would be on the upcoming heroes to see what they had, what the new generation was made of. It was exciting as it was nerving. It was all anyone could talk about and focus on. Everyone was going to be a part of it. Well, almost everyone. During those 2 weeks of preparing, something was stirring, something was happening. Holding a finger out to the doorbell, Izuku rang it. The chime dinged from inside. He waited, but no one came to the door. So he rang it again, this time adding a knock. Again. Still no one came. So he called out again. April, May, it's me, Izuku. He waited a few seconds. I just waited to know if, well, what was the point? How many times had been here doing this? Ringing the bell, knocking on the door, calling out for them to get no answer. These past 2 weeks he's been doing it. Even calling April's cell to leave messages, finding he couldn't anymore. The box was full. Even May's. Irakara too had been calling April. Ida included himself. Both of them came with him a few times to see if they were home, finding no response at all. Ida, though, kind of almost made a spectacle, nearly pounding on the door. Neighbors came out to see what all the pounding was about. They quickly hurried away before anything further happened. Legally happened. Class still went on as normal. It just felt, well, Izuku couldn't really explain it. Just in school for 1 day to no longer come back. Well, hopefully they would, or maybe it was just something for right now. Still, his eyes slowly fall to his feet. It couldn't have been that bad for them to be taken out, taken away. Defeated, yet again, let a sigh slip through his lips, walked away. They lived on the 4th floor, so it was just a few flights he had to go down. The first day they started walking to class together. May decided to fly down, jumped right over the side like it was nothing. He nearly freaked out, if not for April, who assured him it was all right. Her words didn't really help. He raced to the balcony and screamed out May's name. She came back instantly, popped right up actually with a questionable look as to why he was in distress. He saw what April meant. May was completely fine, hovering there in midair like it was nothing. To suddenly giggle at his concerns, assuring that she was all right, and dropped back down like nothing. Meeting April and him down at the bottom, kimono and all. Man, he muttered to himself. What's going on? Where did they go? Question after question rose in his mind. He wondered for a moment if Momo came across the same lost as himself. She hadn't said anything about the Hamados being or their whereabouts. Focused on the questions, he didn't see what was in front of him. Bumped right into it, them. Knocking himself and them nearly off balance. Snapped him back. He exclaimed, looking up. Sweating. I'm so sorry. Quickly goes to help them, picking up what they dropped. They said nothing, just picked up their fallen items, collecting the scattered papers and pens, putting them back in the folder they came from. Here, Izuku hands them what he gathered. A gentle, slim hand covered in long white gloves reached out to take them, and in a voice that rushed red to Izuku's cheek and left him sort of a daze, thanked him. What a kind young man, thank you very much. I apologize myself, I was not clearly watching when I should be. Smiling softly, they leave. Blinking a few times, Izuku found himself alone. He looked around, it was just him and no one. Yet, he was sure he heard a voice. He could still hear it, and there was something else, that feeling. Lift a hand to his cheek. It felt familiar, warm, like some sort of glow. He took a moment to recall. He was sure for that brief moment. For just a second he caught a glimpse of their hair. It was color that was similar to no, it couldn't be, it was just weird. Not thinking much of it, left to go train. To bad thought. He was sure May would have enjoyed going to Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. Maybe next time. It was finally here. The sports festival. Everyone, every student from UA, from each class department was here. To in a way keep it fair, everyone wore their PE uniform. People and heroes gathered for the exciting event soon to happen, taking seats and clamoring. Security was increased as promised. A few pros were hired to do so. The place was packed. It was hard not to have rattling nerves. This whole thing, their performance, could so many open doors it could mean. With time creeping closer to the start of the festival, Ida hurried to inform the others it was almost about to start, hastily making his way to 1A's waiting room where everyone was getting ready, when a familiar cool voice called to him, "Ida." He stopped instantly and whipped his head around, gasped, at who stood there smirking. A small laugh slipped from their lips, dressed and ready for the event. A surprise to him. Actually, both were a surprise. He blinked a few times, even lifting up his glasses to make sure, before a glad smile appeared welcoming them. Well, he began adjusting his glasses. This is quite a surprise. They chuckled softly, with a light shrug. Yeah, I suppose it is. We're not late, are we? He shook his head, lightly smiling. No, not at all. In fact, I'd say you're on time. I was just about to go and inform the others. Studious as ever, they snickered, flicking him in the shoulder playfully. We might as well go with you. Ready, May? April turned to you, floating next to her, hearing your sister nod jovially. Yes, very much so. I cannot wait to see Izuku-chan again. And of course everyone. Come, you fly around Ida and April before them. Let us go and get everyone so that we may all be ready to partake in the festival. Before Ida or April could say anything, you flew off. Wait. Ida tried to call you back, but it didn't work. You were gone. With only faint trail of golden yellow was all they saw. April couldn't help but laugh, while Ida stood there at a loss, pinching his brow. Does she even know where to go? Shaking her head, April just shrugged. Maybe, maybe not, but ... She closed her eyes for a moment, touched her temple lightly for a moment, opened her eyes. In less than a few seconds you came back. May. She rested her hands on your shoulder, with a slight stern voice. You've got to stay with me. Remember, that's right. You forgot. Oh, yes, forgive me. That's all right. April gave you a light pat. Let's go. Nodding, stand by your sister's side and wait for Ida to lead. He was surprised for a moment how you instantly changed. What did April do? She used her quirk to bring you back. Then again she did tell him she and you could communicate via certain distance. Well, you were here, that's what mattered. Straightening himself leads the way to the others, which you could not wait, and followed happily down the hall. Stop suddenly and turn around. Something felt fading yet at the same time familiar. Sent a prickled tremble through your body. You winced. What was this familiar fading feeling? Why did it feel so familiar in the first place? And blink a few times, weren't sure if your eyes were playing a trick on you. Rub them for a moment, you saw something. No, someone, a person. No, a child and some adult, you weren't sure. Except they had silver eyes. Well, the child did. Sharp silver eyes. Empty eyes. Staring right at you like daggers. They seemed so familiar. Continuing rubbing your eyes, a voice came from a distance. Almost like an echo in the wind, spoke your name. And a voice was familiar. It was smooth and honeyed, calling for you. It held you. You weren't sure why, but an instant chill shot up your spine. You almost yelped when a hand came down on your shoulder, jerked instead. Whoa, May, you okay? April's voice brought you back, laced with concern. Blinking a few times she comes into vision. Ida too. Color and a smile rushed back to your face. Release the breath held in your throat. Remaining smiling brightly. You still hadn't answered April's question, so she asked again, this time with Ida. Yes, I am well. Very much, you said. Ida and April look at one another, not swayed. You saw it, and your smile turned into puffed out cheeks. And just, your mind thinks quickly of what to say. Filled the many butterflies swarming in my stomach. You mean butterflies in your stomach? Ida corrects you. You nod. Yes, that one. The many butterflies in my stomach. They are flutter around, because I am just filled with tension that is ready to burst. Also, your right ankle begins scratching the back of your left leg. Look down for a moment. I was just thinking that if. Lift your eyes to April, round with worry, well. April understood and rolled her eyes. With a hand on her hip, flicked your forehead. Seriously, May, you gave me a scare. I thought something was wrong. Don't worry, I'm sure they're fine. It's not that hard to get lost here. Besides, remember they'll have someone there to escort them. So there's nothing to worry about. Rubbing your head where she flicked you, give a small smile. Yes, of course. Wondering who this person you and April were talking about, Ida was about to ask. But April spoke over him. Well, let's go. You said it nearing the time. Besides, she thumbed over her shoulder at you. May has been dying to see Izuku. The mention of his name, all you felt vanished and your radiant came back. Jump up and down on the balls of your feet, clapping your hands together. Izuku-chan, I wish to enjoy some yummy substance with him. Come, let us go. You start to push Ida forward. To his surprise, you pushed him with ease. April's hand whipped out and pulled you back by the collar, shaking a finger before you. Stop it. From her firm eyes you do and calm down. But that didn't stop the joy from bouncing inside. With that taken care of, Ida continued towards the room, you and April behind him. A silhouette stepped out, their eyes following the two sisters. Walk on, one in particular clenched their hand to a shaking fist. Turn and melt back into the shadows of the hall. Their presence didn't go unnoticed by someone's blue eyes. In Class 1A's waiting room, everyone was ready, dressed and all. Some talk among themselves on what the festival might have for the events. Excited about their thoughts. Ready himself, Izuku looked around the room, at all the faces. Too bad though, not all the faces were here. He wasn't the only either. Momo focused a bit of her mind too, wished for 4 other faces to be here and partake in the festival. It would be an honor and wonderful sight to see a family such as that to present themselves to the world. Then again, Splinter's words and Leo's repeat themselves in her mind. Maybe it was best they didn't, still thought. Everyone, Ida announced, opening door, get your game face on. We're entering the arena soon. A hand on his chest, Izuku let out a relieved breath from the mild fright Ida gave. That was all. Thank goodness. Midoriya, Shoto called his attention, approached him. Izuku turned to him. Hey, Todoroki, kept calm under Shoto's calm yet cold glare. What's up? A thick pressure filled the room around the two of them. The whole class listened, especially Bakugou, who sat not too far away, gave attention to the two. Taking a few more seconds, Shoto spoke. From an objective standard, it's fairly clear that I'm stronger than you. Yeah, however, you've got All Might in your corner helping you out. I'm not here to pry on what's going on between you two, but know that I will beat you. Tensions stiffened further. Kirishima stood up and tried to defuse the situation between them. Hey, what's the big idea? Trying to pick a fight, and right before Shoto rolled him off. We're not here to be each other friends. His words made Ida remember something. Done. Shoto turned and walked away. Don't forget, this isn't a team effort. Musing over Shoto's words for a moment, Izuku spoke up. Wait a sec, Todoroki. Shoto stopped to listen. I don't know what's going through your head or why you think you should tell you'll beat me. Yeah, of course you're better than me. In fact, you have way more potential than anyone in the hero course. That's why you go in so easily. Midoriya, maybe you're being too hard on yourself, Kirishima said. And us? No, he's right, you guys. All these other courses, they're coming at us with everything we've got. You're all going to have fight to stand out. And he raised his eyes filled with declaration and drive at Shoto. I plan to aim for the top 2. Fine, Shoto accepted unfazed. With that set straight, it was time for the even to start. Everyone began walking out the room. Izuku heart raced and mind focused. He didn't notice someone slipped in his thoughts. My goodness, so serious? Midoriya, or do you prefer Izuku? Izuku snapped from his thoughts, looked around, and found April standing not too far, looking back, smirking that turned into a grin. His face light up. Knowing he was about to scream her name, April puts a finger to her lip. April, Izuku exclaimed. I wait a minute. He looked around. Where's May? At the mention of your name, you fly in with your arms open. Izuku-chan, wrap them around the first solid thing. Squeeze hard, though not too hard, and lift. Izuku-chan, it is so goo. May. Izuku cleared his throat and pointed, with a slight nervous laugh. That's not me. Hearing him, take a look at who you hugged instead and find to your surprise and confusion Shoto. Oh, you set him down and release. He gave you a quick cold glare, then sighed and walked away. Try number 2, rush and throw your arms around whom you hoped to Izuku. It was firm, like Izuku, but it wasn't. Izuku pointed it out to you. Again, April just laughed with Yurikara. Ida just didn't know what to say. Look and find it was that spiky red-haired boy from class. What was his name? Kirishima or something? Or was it Red Herring? You are not Izuku-chan. you said. He gave a slight nervous laugh, scratching the back of his neck. Yeah, no. Thumbed over his shoulder to Izuku. Following his thumb you see Izuku just a few feet behind. Your face light up. In an instant you released Kirishima and rushed to Izuku. Nearly if not almost knocked him down. He didn't seem to mind or the iron grip you had around him. If you had a tail, it would be wagging. From the joy that radiated from you. Izuku-chan. Izuku-chan. You chirped. It is most wonderful to see you again. Managing to get an arm free, Izuku gave you a light pat on the back, and through breaths express his sentiment. Why yeah, you too. Hearing those words, you squeezed tighter. He heard a crack or it was just his imagination. Okay, April stepped in. Ino. Enough. Ida cuts in, pushing April to side, taking over. Came over, prying you away. We don't have the time for, it's about to start. Come now, we must be on time. Suppressing a growl and her rising temperament, April agreed. Yes, her voice hissed. Ida, who didn't notice. Let's go. Cleared her throat back to normal. Come on, May, we've got to get our heads together. Adhering to her, go to her side. Walk with her, with the rest of the class, to the sports festival. Raph nostrils kept breathing out hot air. Many would think he was a bull. It only rose the longer his patience and annoyance lingered. This was stupid, so stupid in the mind. Why did he and his brothers have two? Life would have been much better if they hadn't. Each thought only angered him further. Balled into a fist, he wanted to throw so badly. Instead his flames began to emerge, slowly taking over him, but sped up the more he remained angered. At the fact that why did he have to be there where so many people and all this dang cheering, the loud fireworks shooting out blasting overhead mixed in with the shouts and cheers of others. Felt a flush prickle his skin. If he had his way he wouldn't be doing this, nor would he hear again if it was his choice. He'd. Raph, Leo called to his brother, resting a hand on his shoulder. Calm down, getting upset about this won't do any good. His words only fumed Raph a bit and soured his mood further. But, also rang truth, he released a heavy heated sigh. Blowing away his flames, rubbed a hand over his head, shot a side glare at Leo, who ignored it. Well, Raph said, it does something, so it's good for me. I mean, why do we even have to do this? Crossed his arms, huffed. He knew why and Leo didn't really feel like explain it. Only gave a short answer. You know why, we should be lucky if you think about. Raph didn't need to, nor did he consider it luck. It was more of a punishment. They weren't all of this even with their powers. So close, he thought for a moment, looking up. They could have left this all behind and be on their merry way. Back to what he knew, they all knew. He and his brothers, his father too, they could return. Well, April and May, they were under a different sort of authority. It was less than likely they'd come. Still, it would be nice. The gang would be together. But from what he's seen so far, the sisters seemed to enjoy themselves like his brothers. Well, two of them. Donnie was sort of up in the air. They were ninjas. Why didn't any of them see this or seem to remember? Doing something like this, going out in public, was just living where no one knew about you, was better than having eyes on you. Watching. Maybe, just maybe, there could be another slip up, and sometimes he wondered how they managed to find him and his brothers, when their father kept them so well hidden. Guess that question would have to wait. Right now he had to get ready. It was about to start soon, and Mikey's constant hooting and yelling, along with his constant bouncing from foot to foot, was about to reignite his flames. With a hand raised and coated in flames aimed at Mikey to hit, dropped it. The announcement came for everyone to make their way out. With his feet rooted, Raph refused at first, until Leo came, shoved and nudged him to go. Fine, he grumbled, reached up and to show his protest and feelings to put plainly, ripped off the sleeves of his PE uniform. Smirking, walked out with his brothers, Mikey up ahead. The stadium of sports festival was filled completely by fans, heroes, and many alike. It was a good thing it was huge to house such an enormous crowd. The cheering from so many echoed like a rock star concert. The spirit was living at best, if not more. Vendors from all around came, set up outside selling more than just food. Merchandise of the event and of pro heroes. It was an awing sight and gave Kirby some thoughts on what he'd like to do with his daughters. Spotting a few places to eat, he was sure they'd might like. Having arrived, would have gotten lost if not for meeting up with Splinter and another staff member of UA, and teacher Snipe, a Western-themed cowboy-like hero, escorted him with Splinter inside. Expecting to and believing that he'd sit with Splinter, to be surprised he wasn't, as Splinter needed to be seated elsewhere, but assured that Kirby did get a good spot. Before leaving him, Splinter and Snipe told Kirby if needed something to seek them out. With that, Kirby took his seat, riddling with nerves, drowned out the cheering happening all around him. Only focused on his daughters and spot where they'd be walking out of. That he failed to notice sharp familiar eyes on him, that narrowed. He did though feel a haunting chill run down his spine. Turned around, scanned across the crowd, saw no one. turned back to his focus. "Hey, make some noise." A loud, thrilled and enthusiastic crowd-pleasing voice boomed. Startled Kirby, he almost popped out his seat, turned to the large screen sitting overhead on the stadium, where a tall, slender man with long, spiky blonde hair and a small mustache, with a pair of headphones and sunglasses on, dressed in a black leather jacket, his collar upturned, there was speakers covering his neck completely. "This year we're bringing you some of the hottest performances in sports festival history, guaranteed. I've alone got one question. Before we start this show, are you ready?" Cheers bursted from the crowd. Kirby did his best not be in the way of anyone who stood up. But it was difficult. "Let me hear you scream," as our Inspector Mike ushers them to the big stage. All eyes and heads turned to gate where the students, first years, walked out, each one of them dressed in their PE uniforms. Kirby rose from his seat, began looking for the faces of his daughters, scanning over those that didn't register. The same eyes that noticed him did the same among the students. Smile when they spot them. Kirby's face light up spotting his daughters, both of them walking side by side, April with her forever mellow yet wholesome self in stride, with an assured look set in her eyes, May with her brimming lightness and merriment, those eyes of here wide and joyful, that softly giggled. Kirby was sure she was edged to start jumping up and down. Though she walked out calmly like the rest, he saw what she wanted to do, even if she didn't want to show her own jilting nerves. That only settled when the two sisters looked at each other quickly and smiled. Kirby wondered if they noticed his presence up here. He didn't stand out like many of the other colorful individuals. His plain dark brown and nearly faded jacket that spoke his profession and personality altogether. Even his age, near late 40s. Not to mention he had no well-quirk to help him get their attention. They knew he was here. He did arrive a week before the festival. Both of them were so elated upon his arrival. He smiled, glad to have come, being so far away from his girls knew no words of longing and emptiness. Standing as tall as he could, leaned over a bit. It was a good thing he had such a good seat. Raising a hand waved to get their attention, even calling for them. April, May, nothing. He tried again a few more times, but the cheers of the others drowned him out, and the man on the screen too. He gave up and sat back down, stopped when he noticed the eyes of his daughters casted his way. It was brief, but they locked. A smile came to his face. He raised a hand and waved. May's hand shot up and waved back, almost knocking someone, if not for April, who pulled it back down and refocused her. Chuckling to himself, Kirby sat back down, content and ready to cheer on his daughters. Splinter, though, where he sat with the other teachers of the school, was not in the same way as Kirby. He saw his sons come out, curled his tail. Not because of how they did. Mikey throwing up hang loose signs, Donnie's skittish and rather bored expression. Some of it was towards Raph's defiance. Ripped sleeves of the uniform. A few of the teachers turned to him. He felt their eyes on him, quickly turned when his eyes shot back. Hard. Raph would be given a talking to. Splinter reminded himself. The rest of his fuming anger was from the choice he decided. He shouldn't have reconsidered. Nezu was rather crafty. He had to acknowledge that at least. His words managed to sway, if not simmering, his anger. Along with All Might, Toshinori, their words together along with the words of that girl Momo who came in after to seek an audience with him. Put further words. She was a respectable girl, speaking on behalf of her sons and taking reasonability for what she believed to be her share. That and his sons. He'd give it once more, this try it once again. Of course with adjustments. That Nezu agreed to, but made Toshinori a bit nervous. But Splinter was set on it, so it was given. Watching the students come out, he saw the O'Neill sisters. Smiled a bit. Once all the students came out, gathered in center, Midnight, one of the teachers and pro-heroes. Or rather risque. That showed in her not just her personality but her appearance that spoke for it as well. One that was similar to Dominatrix, if not for the thin white bodysuit that covered her under the breastless leotard. The small flogger whip added to her. Splinter shuddered silently when she entered as the chief referee of the festival, addressing and commanding attention, not just by voice alone either. Nearly every male became enthralled the second she took the stage. Even a few of a younger age, though they tired to hit it. It had a different effect on you, one that took your attention and kept it fixated. You began to lean as your lips parted slowly, that quickly slammed shut when Midnight's eyes swept across each student. Your heart suddenly froze, then pounded in your ears. The way she stood so confident and proudly, smiling and all. So even when she spoke, her voice was. "One-san," you whispered to April, making sure Midnight didn't hear you, tugged on April. She turned to you, taken back by the sparkling look in your eyes. Are you okay?" She whispered back. Your lips pressed together, quiver just a bit. Hold your breath and shut your eyes. Whimper slightly, trying to find the right words. Squeeze tightly on April's arm. You didn't realize how hard until she tapped you. Did you let go? Open them to the sound of Midnight's voice. Turned to her, felt a rise in your cheeks prickle them for a moment. You began to fan yourself, yelp and bury your face in your hands when April lightly poked you. A yelp that cut through the booing from the others. Turned heads when you shouted, expressing yourself. You are very pleasing. A heavy wave of silence swept over. A few stared, if not everyone stared wide eyes at what you said. You believed Midnight heard. April face palmed herself as you buried yourself more in your hands. Izuku stood there. He was one of the few whose mouth fell open and eyes wide, shaking in shock at what you just said, especially at who the words went to. Did that just ... He was trying to register what you said. Of course you didn't know, hopefully. Afraid to see their reaction on stage, Izuku slowly slid his eyes to them. They were stunned for a moment that quickly bared into anger on their face. Explosive anger that locked you in their radar. It intense. Izuku became afraid for you. Coughing, Midnight takes the attention back to announce the first preliminaries of the festival. Now, without further ado, let's get started. The first faithful game of the festival. April, busy with snapping you back, managed to, just in time too. The first event was picked. You and her look, surprised and a bit confused at what it was. Midnight kept going. A hologram board appeared behind her, with a large slot bar that spun rapidly. Stopped. Tada, obstacle course. All 11 classes would participate in the treacherous contest, 4 kilometers around outside the stadium. She whipped her whip. I don't want to restrain anyone, at least in this game. Your hand found April's, squeezed, then reached out for another's. Midnight kept going. As long as you don't leave the course, you're free to do whatever your heart's desire. The crowd cheered. Now then, take your places. The gates began to open. Everyone went over and stared up at the green lights the moment they beeped on. Everyone paused and waited. You remained close to April. She did the same with you. The rapid heartbeats of others, pounding against their chests, filled the tense, focused silence. It felt nearly suffocating. You began shaking all over, swallowed hard, gripped more with April. Your display was pathetic in the eyes that spotted you and April. That itched to react, but held back, swallowing the thought. Focused on the start of the festival. The 3 lights over the door began to drop one by one. It was about to start, all of it. April got her focus ready. Each of her muscles flamed reaction. The same with Leo and his brothers. You too, if they hadn't began shaking, and if your mind and eyes hadn't begun to wonder. Blazing over the many faces, look for and single out Izuku. Smile that dropped. He was focused too, just as much as the others. Everyone. The second light dropped. Kirby held his breath and crossed his fingers, whispered of encouragement and safety. Splinter's eyes stayed on his sons. Each of them. The third light dropped. Begin. Midnight shouted. Everyone raced through the narrow corridor, getting packed in, trying to get out and away from others, pushing and shoving one another. Not caring how they did it, an elbow came and knocked you in the face, separated April from you. You tried to shout and reach for her. Anyone you knew called for them. Got nothing. Except more thrashing about. You panicked, screamed, shoved back hard, sent many out your way, gave yourself room and took to the air. Flew straight out the corridor, calling for your sister. Anyone. You lost your focus, hit something hard, cold and metal. Not to mention massive. You shrunk at the sight. The massive bot that towered over you and everyone left you frozen. In its gaze it locked upon you. With its red leans, raised one of its large appendages, smashed it down on its target into the ground. How pathetic. What a simple disgrace this was. What their power they were given. What just a simple disgrace. It was sickening. They simple froze and cowered under the sight of a simple villain bot. Weak. That was the right word to call them. Weak. They would not stand for it. Weakness would know it should be an ounce in them, yet here it showed. Unlike the other one, who managed to get out with their mother's inherited powers. Just with a simple flip of the wrist, focus, and mighty pull ripped off a good amount of the villain bot. Proceeded with the rest of the students who managed to get through the first corridor, despite the ground being covered in ice by that Todoroki kid, followed behind quite a few others, looking like their mother. Damn her in all their glory. Just no blonde hair or green eyes. But the facial structure was the same. They shared that together as well. And the drive in their eyes gleamed the same. When focused, quickly left April's eyes the moment she heard the yelps of May. Whipped her head around, just in time to see in horror her sister smashed into the ground by one of the villain bots. April's heart lurched. Kirby stopped and froze. He shot up from his seat, eyes locked on the screen, as April's were on the dust that rose from the horror, rushed back against the wave. Students pushing the way opposite way. Her hand out, screamed, May, hold on. Leo and his brothers all together managed to pass. Donnie was the one who got them through, switched with Leo who took front again, stopped from the shouts of April. Each of them felt the ground tremble from the heavy impact, turned their heads around. just as April pushed telekinetically past them. The bottom of her feet glowed with a soft blue hue, sending her like an arrow back in the direction. Hear her screams. The brothers stop. Splinter, where he sat, brows knotted, then one rose at this. Listened to President Mike commentate the scene of events. Most students manage to get through the frozen trap, not face off against the villain bots. Though it looks like not all. Oh, like a fly it seems UAS little Firefly was swatted before it all began. And oh. What's this? A sister's love turned O'Neill around to go to the rescues. Through his bandages, Aizawa's eyes narrowed at the action. Fading out President Mike's words, most of them, following April's choice to turn around and go to her sister's aid, projected so much. Admirable was one of them. From those who looked on, her choice surely caught the eyes of a few heroes here. Though not with the crowd, he was sure he could hear April's name pass between their lips. Not to mention her quirk, the way she ripped off a bit of the bot to get through. He wasn't sure if that was raw power or not. One thing for sure, the strength of it mirrored if not greater than her own mother. Her actions, though, were of another. The same with May. Her actions, Aizawa sighed with a grunt. Just like those two, he expressed to himself. Continued to watch scene. April had managed to make it back and tow the brothers. Not a surprise, disappointing. He frowned, shifting his eyes to Leo, who directed his brothers on what to do. They nod and split up. They all work well in sync, but it's a foolish thing to do. They'll be left behind, and considering they haven't even worked together using their quirks. If May hadn't gotten distracted and panicked, then she would have been fine. But her actions come with price. April reached the spot, ran through the thick dust cloud that had began to settle, shouted for her sister, fanning some of the cloud out the way. There was no response. She kept shouting and shouting. Kirby stood from his seat and shouted for her, though it was pointless from the cheers of the crowd. Still he kept going. Splinter noticed him and the grim fear washed on his face. Bothered Splinter's heart. The other teachers around turned slightly to the mutant, surprised themselves. Splinter paid them no mind. His attention remained on his sons and students. They weren't really using anything he taught them. Well, his sons did at least. April seemed keeping her senses up, it seemed. May did not. This was different from back home. Things sprung on them suddenly. No shadows to conceal them. He couldn't see anything really. The dust was rather thick, so April stopped for a moment and closed her eyes. Touched the temple of her head lightly with 2 fingers. Searched for May. Felt her. She was here. She was cold. Wait, what? Cold? No. April pushed further. This feeling was this blotch feeling. What was she doing again? Opening her eyes, looked around. Why was she back here at the corridor? She should be up there with the others, her sister and friends. Where? Turning heel, hurried away. Stopped when soft grunts reached her ears. She knew those grunts. Turned around to the dust cloud, puzzled and surprised, who came out with a few other students, slightly carried by Mikey on one side. May, what are you doing back here? April hurried over to your side, taking you from Mikey, quickly looking you over. There was nothing wrong. Her reaction wasn't what you expected. Look at her with a quizzed expression. You try to explain, turn around, pointing back to where you had been. Lucky you put up a defense before being smashed, indented into the ground, from the bot's attack. I had to keep it up to make sure that myself and others were safe. April sighed. Of course you did, but we've got to hurry. Come on, we've lost distance compared to the others. That hurt, but you understood. Release yourself from her hold. Staggered just a bit, bounce back and fly up. Hold out a hand. Come, I shall make sure we recover the distance and time. Smirking, April took hold of your hand. You put out your other one. Leo grabs it. Donnie held on to him. Mikey with April, and Raph grudgingly did so. You dipped a little, but too much. Tell them to hold on and fly off. A trail of golden yellow blazed behind you. Cover the others in your aura. Focus on the task before you. Eyes locked to nothing but making out across the finish line. Though your mind wondered just a little about Izuku, if he was alright. Did he need your assistance? How far was he? May, April chides you. Stay focused. Don't worry about him. I'm sure he's fine. Her words gave little comfort. Nodding, you kept going, unaware of eyes catching a glimpse of you from down below. A few other eyes too look up at the Americans flying overhead. Some mouths dropped and others scratched their head, wondering how someone of such a petite size was carrying that amount of passengers. Guys, Donnie said. People are looking. Leo and the others looked down. Mikey threw his head back, howling and laughing. Raph shooed everyone a flared glare to hide his own uncomfortableness. Scoffed. Idiots. Ignoring him, April looked up ahead. We're coming up to the next obstacle. Pointed. Eyes and heads follow. There was a canyon up ahead with squinting tightropes. No big deal. May, Leo looked to you. You quickly meet your glowing eyes with his. Do you think you can get us across? Giving it a thought for a moment, nod slowly when, wham, something blasted you right out the air with the others. Unsure which direction it came, crashed to the ground. The others fall faster. Brace yourselves, Leo shouts, getting himself ready. The rest do the same. April though had more concerns. Whatever it was that struck you was a force that stunned you. You dropped lifelessly. May, she shouted, in hopes it would wake you. But nothing. You were going to crash hard and who knows what else. She wasn't anywhere close enough to get you. With no other choice, bit her lip, called you through a mental blast. Nothing. She did it again. This time with more force. It was like a blast of thunder ruptured in your mind, snapped you awake. Saw the ground became closer, tucked and twisted just in time. Cushion the hard impact, shot a blow through you. Dazed just a bit, with the wind knocked from you. Scramble up, what was that? That hit you. It felt shaking your head to regain vision and focus. From the double vision you were seeing, stand, fall down. A hand presents itself before you. Here, a distorted mellow guttural voice offered. Your hand raises to it. They quickly grab it and help you up and dust you off. That seemed like a nasty fall. There, they finished. April's voice cut through. Looking over their shoulder, see her coming and leave your side. Seconds later April came to you, quickly checked you over, held your face in her hands turning you to look at her. The daze was still there, she saw it. She snapped her fingers before you. In a few seconds, your eyes and ears follow her snapping. Another few she came into view. Her blue eyes wide with wetness, smiled seeing you back. Hugged you quickly. You're okay, she sighed, tightening the hug. Blinking a few times, slowly look around. At the students passing. April, you speak. Why are we? You pause for a moment, your head was throbbing. What just happened? And you lift your hand, stare at it for a moment. Front and back. That touch it seemed. A small hand reached out and took hold of another, with a familiar sharp guttural child voice followed behind. They hold tighter. Tighter you remain staring at your hand. That touch it was. April's voice returned you back. Her eyes stared into yours, you looked back. She said nothing but her eyes searched yours carefully, cupped your face gently in her hands. The scene was all too familiar. A few had to do a double take, a few gasps slipped from the lips of others. It was so uncanny, like history was repeating itself at that very moment the way the sisters remained. Even more so when April pressed her temple lightly on yours. A warm ting melted through you and you. One san. You cry, smile. Hearing you call her that, April smiled. Ready? She asked, taking your hand. You nod, hold hers tighter. Good, she smirked and took off. Explain the situation to you. We've got to be careful when cross these. I know you're not up to flying over right now, so I'll get us over okay. Okay. She lead the way, you followed. Softly smiling, that grew warmer looking at her. Your sister was always here. Reaching the canyon, April stops for a moment. A few other students went by. Idia slide by with careful balance across the rope. Suyu walked on all four across, thanks to her quirk. The guys you noticed were up ahead. They briskly ran, jumped, then flipped off to the next pillar. Everyone was finding their way across, to get there to the finish line. Alright, April stopped, for a moment analyzed the obstacle, formulating a plan. You look and see it. Reminded you of the telephone wires back home and a training splinter put everyone through. Realized it. Tug on April. One san, she turned to you, pulling her down, whisper in her ear. Okay, she smiled, pulling you close. Stay close. She held out a hand outlined into the blue hue at a few wires, breaking them and brought them over. Connected them. With at least 5, you and her cross. She did the same thing with the others. All the way to the end. That came the final obstacle, the minefield. We've got to be careful, Leo stated to his brothers, having reached the area with others. Watch them carefully tread across. A few already stepped on them and exploded. This would be much easier if they had Donnie's staff or his katanas. But they didn't and had to go about this carefully. One misstep, Donnie theorized. We could lose our lead and who knows. So, Raffi turned to his elder brother, who dropped his frown further. Keep a cool lid, okay? All his brothers turned to Raph, agreeing with Donnie. Fine, Raph grumbled, crossing his arms. Whatever. Words were cheap, but they hoped Raph would hold to it. Turning back to the minefield, Leo knew he couldn't really go first if they had waited for April, and then they'd at least have some sort of advantage. But they didn't. This was a race after all, and their time was eaten up twice. They had to make up for this. Not to mention they had to uphold their family's name. Hamado's. Mikey, he called to the youngest. You better go first. Your quirk might actually help us right now. I really get my focus right now. Getting it, Mikey flipped before his brothers. Just almost landed on a mine. Nearly made them scream. Dudes, Mikey laughed. Don't worry, I got this. Just stay close, y'all. With a crack of his knuckles, a twist of his back, and confident grin on, Mikey stepped out onto the field. Mikey remembered it was the coolest thing. When he found out about his quirk, it was even cooler when he first actually saw it in action. Under the close observation of Aizawa, for each of them back in New York, the man took them each of them to empty designated area where they would be tested for the UA. For the entrance exam and quirk apprehension tests, he wanted to see their quirks, each of them. No fathers around, no longer in the heart of New York sewers, it away from all that. The moment he told them to start, one by one, they used their quirks. Leo went first, being the leader, followed after was Raph, then Donnie. April came, May right after, and the second it came to Mikey's turn, he couldn't wait. What he did was super cool. What Awaza called was even better, fortunate. He didn't realize this whole time he had it, though it did make sense why he was able to make it out of things well or with luck. It only lasted for a bit and required in a sense absent-minded focus, as Aizawa put it. It would work out. If others were with him, they'd be okay as long as they stayed within it or followed right after. This was why Leo wanted him to lead in the minefield. His brothers stayed close, following the best they could his movements. It was fun if not enjoyable for Mikey, his thoughts nearly everywhere, if not for Donnie to snap him to stay on the task at hand. They nearly set off a mine. Sorry, bros. Mikey apologized with a smile. They frowned hard at him, with a glare. Sorry doesn't cut it if we're blown up. Raph snapped. So quite playing around. Or you burnt turtle. Calm down, Raph. Leo stepped in. We don't need you blowing a cap. That's only going to make it worse. But seriously, Mikey, you've got to focus or something. So we can get done with this and hopefully make to the next part. Mikey stopped a few feet ahead, orange glowing footprints behind where he stepped. His brothers each landing on them, while the ones behind them vanished. Don't worry, I got this. Besides, he thumbed over. We're almost there. An explosion went off behind them. With a few yelps, they looked. A couple of students stepped on mines. Exploded. Not actually, they just became covered in a pinkish purple paint like mist. Donnie sharply points at the scene. See, Mikey did. Blows it off. That's nothing, we'll be alright. You'll just got to follow my lead and we'll be good. Come on. He hurried off laughing. His brothers follow him quickly and carefully, stepping on each footprint he left. They weren't that far up ahead, but close enough. Another explosion went off not too far behind them. Raph snapped at Mikey to hurry up. Something April knew she and May needed to do. Still holding your sister's hand, you both finally reached the minefield. A disappointment to a certain person in the crowd pointed it out. You see that, Novan? They said to the one sitting next to them. That is disgusting. They should have been further. They sigh, their sharp eyes lock on Kirby. You did this. Feeling eyes on him, Kirby left it alone, focused on his daughters. Seeing them fall out the sky and nearly injured themselves, stopped his heart. Luckily, April fought quickly and they managed to come out unscathed. Well, at least April. May fell rather hard, but not too hard. Thank goodness for Splinter's training. She managed to catch herself just a bit. He knew it wasn't much. That didn't stop his mind from hoping she was alright. They crossed the second obstacle. Now it was minefield. That didn't settle well with Kirby. Though the mines from what he saw when they exploded weren't harmful, which was good he supposed, it still didn't stop his nerves from rising. May hadn't seemed to recover her flying, which he knew would be helpful right now. She did seem to recover some of her quirk, her favorite and specialty, producing protection. There was no doubt in his mind. The moment his youngest saw what the mines did and heard what the next obstacle covered herself and April in a thin outline of golden energy, it would make it easier for them to get through should they step on any. Both of them working in tandem. He couldn't be prouder, with May offering protection. April could use her telekinesis to move any mines she believed to be around them. A wonderful plan. He smiled proud and pleased. Those eyes narrowed further at him, sickening for a moment as a smile curled on their pressed lips. Kirby, what a fool, what a nostalgia fool. Those days were long gone. He should know that by now, they'd make sure of it. Folding their arms, sit back in their seat, noticed a certain flame person out the corner of their eyes in the crowd. Their lips slowly curled into a smile. Rose a well-manicured nail to their chin, tapping it a few times. Rose from their seat. Stay here, I'll be right back. They tell the other, I've got some investment to do. Pay attention. Leaving them, listening to what they were told, turned their silver eyes back to the screen. It was still anyone race, really, besides the fact Shoto and Bakugou being first. Their eyes studied the two. It was clear one of them would be first the way they fought over first place. For the rest, they carefully went over the mines. Some it was a challenge. Some had trickle of sweat beads roll down. Others quivered. It seemed only a few stuck together as teams. The ones from America, the Hamato brothers and the O'Neill sisters. From a certain perspective, their idea was a not bright. Staying together would drag them down. This was a competition. Even that boy, that green-haired boy still carrying a slate piece of villain bot tied to his back, was by himself. He stopped at the minefield and begun digging with the piece of green metal, for reasons unknown to them. Keeping a tight hold with April's hand and the protection up for the two of you, you and her crossed the minefield. April managed to use her telekinesis to move the mines before stepping on them. You and her weren't far up ahead. You hadn't spotted Leo and the guys, meaning they were up ahead. Hopefully they were all right. Actually, you hoped everyone around would make it through without an explosion happening. But a few did. One was rather close to you and April. You almost let go of her hand to go assist them, but she held you back, telling you sternly no. Even if you tried to plead, she still said no. It just didn't make any sense, as heroes weren't you supposed to help? That's what you and the others did back home, even if it was in the shadows. You'd help. Now that didn't seem to be case. It was everyone for themselves. It sat an unflavored taste in your mouth. Still, there had to be some way you could help. Noticing a few others from class as you both ran by, reach your hand out to the one in your sight. Whisper, repeal. A faint glow of energy left you and went to them, covered them like you and April, though in a thinner line. That they did notice and stopped for a moment, looking at themselves for a moment. This color they knew who it belonged to, looked up, finding you up ahead. Did you just puzzled a bit, shrug and carefully tread the field? Smiling to yourself, they were all right, turn back around, keeping your focus on you and April's protection. It was hard with so many who needed. April tugged you a little, you looked to her. Keep a straight focus. We're almost there. You reluctantly nod. I am one soon. I promise, it's just well so many. I know you have already told me that we must keep going to get ahead. But I am just. A large explosion went off, shaking the ground, startling you, nearly caused you to let go of April's hand. She quickly gripped down harder. Sorry. She didn't respond. Her attention was captured by something else, or better, someone else, propelling themselves over everyone. The owner of the huge explosion. You look up too, surprised at who it was. Riding the piece of metal they used for protection from the mines, taking the lead over everyone still making their way through the mines. Izuku. He was in your mind, flying. It was amazing. You couldn't take your eyes off, an inability to find any words. All widening eyes stayed on Izuku, stunned at the sight. It froze everyone for some time, only came back from another large explosion up ahead. Come on, April shouted, yanking you. You nearly lost your footing, but managed to get it, hurried with her. Everyone seemed to now, it seemed as thought cautiousness was out the door. Everyone, the rise of their determination was like a heavy wave. Each of them pushing themselves to get there, to the end. To make it. Everyone's heart pounded hard, rushing with energy that flared, keeping you focused while trying not to lose it. April kept increasing her speed. It was like she was dragging you. Your feet almost a couple of times knotted together. The first few times, she tugged you to get focused. It worked, while also it worried you. She wasn't normally like this. She would get this extremely focused. She wouldn't keep yanking you forward. Every few seconds, the pinched, tension-filled expression on her face was hard. Your lips began to tremble at the sight. April yanked. You winced to get struck by something. Or someone. It almost cost you to lose focus, but you didn't. Not even from the hard laughter from whoever did. They came at you and April again. April yanked and threw you forward, spun around with a swipe of the hand, pushed whoever attacked back. April, you shout back, catching your footing, raced back. April, through your arms, dive out to catch her. April, she heard you, your panicked screams. She had a second to do this. Thank goodness her body reacted on its own. Thank goodness for muscle memories and training. Arched herself back, put her hands down on the ground, heard a click, pushed and flipped off backwards. Just as a mine went off, narrowly escaping the explosion, reached out and grabbed you by the collar, snatched you back. Tucked you close, and with her telekinesis applied force against the explosion, yelled for you to hold on, smirked, thanking Izuku. Those in the crowd watched the two sisters from the explosion launch their way past the others. Kirby stood up, mouth open, smiling. Clapped, seeing the quick thinking of his eldest. Rooted, even more noticing her smirk. April yelled through the rushing air. Get ready. You knew what she meant. Yeah, okay. You shout back. It was hard to give it focus, but with April's help surround you and her in sphere of energy. Hit the ground, bounce off a few mines, setting them get launched again. You kept the sphere up, despite roughing you felt. You had to keep it up just a little more. You could hear the roaring and cheering of the crowd. A fast pulse race surged through you. You didn't want it to stop. The sphere hits the ground again, and gets blasted. You and April hold on to each other, reaching the end. Your strength, the sphere was just a little more. It bounced once more. Yes, Kirby jumped up, cheering and applauding the moment his daughters crossed the finish line. Still bouncing a bit, it stopped and sphere went down. You and April made it. You made it. Relieved breath, turned to April. She turned to you and smiled, sitting up. We did it. She held up a hand for a high five. Good job. Overjoyed, you tackle her laughing and cheering. She caught herself from your weight and smiled. Hugged you back, laughing with you. April, May, Donnie called. You made it. He and his brothers come over, they made it. Nice entrance. Mikey joked. Helping you up, Leo helped April. You smiled. He threw his arm around your shoulders, you do the same. Soon include the others. All friends made it, they made it past the first of the events. Here together, and together they'd make sure to take on the next, this time as a group. Splinter sat with a marveled and proud smirk quietly on his lips. His eyes rose the same at accomplishment of his sons and students. They made it through the first part of the sports festival. Seeing them embrace each other on a job well done warmed his heart. To relive such a moment warmed his blood. Recalling for a moment how he felt coming across the line, though it was a different setup than what the current students went through. The feeling was still same. The cheer and clamoring of the crowd was quite a joy to soak in. Yes, he remembered standing the same age as his sons and students were now in the arena, smiling from ear to ear on a job well done. Though he remained calm and studious, he couldn't help but raise a hand and feel their cheers. He was a Hamato, of course, so it was expected of him, and he showed just how well those of his family were. He had too and was glad too. He made through, they made it through now. His smirk lowered. Now came the next part. He wasn't sure what it was. He knew this feeling knotted in his gut that their cheers wouldn't keep their joys, especially when it came to the last part of the festival. The part that everyone couldn't wait to get to. It would show just how well everyone, correction, the few who managed to get to the last part, how well they truly were. There wasn't any doubt in his mind, nor on his face, that Toshinori could see. The mutant was so calm and filled focused confidence on his sons and sisters, which he had every right to be, considering his masterful lineage. He had to have put the 6 of them through some sort of training. Being trained by a Hamato, feeling his eyes on him, Splinter whipped his eyes to the pro hero, who quickly turned back to the arena. His eyes fall to Izuku, who was surprised, jumped by May, nearly frightening him. She clung to him like a cola, smiles and all. Her friends and sister not too far watched her behavior that made them smile, and one smirk with an eye roll. Izuku, though he didn't seem to mind, began turning blue from her tight grip around his throat that was instantly caught by April, who using her quirk lifted her sister from Izuku. The youngest really was either drawn or attached to Izuku for some reason, reasons that not many couldn't put a finger on. She seemed to illuminate in his presence. Like a fly to honey, one could simply put it. It was hard not to laugh a bit at it, so Toshinori smirked, shaking his head. The youngest was different from the eldest, April, those 2 girls from America, quite a pair. The same can be said for the 4 brothers. The sisters, how they both resembled the other 2 sisters many years ago. Those 2 sisters competed in the sports festival. It's hard not to forget. How could many forget? It was the chariot race. Both sisters came out and made it to the next round. The eldest with her quirk blasted their way through, her sister next to her, hand in hand, as the O'Neill girls, those 2 sisters, how could Iwaza forget? Watching them, the eldest was beast, especially when it came to the last event of the festival. One thing was for sure, those 2 sisters, a gift ran through their blood. They fought their way completely. They finally made it through. The students crossed the finish line. Everyone, but only certain amount would move on to the next round, which was sad, but understandable. This was a competition after all, despite the name of the whole event. It is quite unfortunate, you said sadly, looking around the others who did not make it, that not everyone will not be allowed to move on to the next round of the festival. Raph scoffed. Too bad for them. He shrugged. You don't get what you want, so oh well. Raph, Donnie chided with a sigh. Ignore him, May. But he does have a point though. It is unfair. You turned to him, eyes filled with emotion for the others. But again, this is a competition, so those who make it do and those who don't. You rebuttal. But if the course and spirits weren't so high within everyone, they could have come in. I am well aware this is a contest. But at the same time, your words fall to the side with your eyes. The words you wanted to say, realized would not change, so you left it alone. At least we made it. Mikey came in to cheer the mood, throwing an arm around your shoulder, squeeze you close. So don't fret, girl. Just cause the others didn't make don't mean they still ain't go skills. It's all how you use it, like the way you and April came in like some sort of ping pong. He threw his head back, laughing, a laugh that turned a few heads. Izuku, who was still rubbing his throat a bit, turned to the 6 American friends and smiled. He was glad to see the sisters made it, and the way they came in was interesting, if not creative. He wasn't the only one. Back in the crowd, in the stands, business was being conducted, or better persuaded, standing side by side with the mighty flame hero, a sardonic on their sweet lips, while the heroes remained hardened, even as they listened to their words. That held their interest very little. Eyes gazed down at the Americans. On a particular one. I see nothing. They're nothing, as you say. Why would I want something dependent and weak? Who couldn't even manage to get past the first obstacle. They're nothing like you say they are. I expected more. Compared to their turquoise eyes slide sharply to them. Others, they could see why the hero thought that. A crafty smile nodded. Yes, I agree, shrug, sigh, slowly shaking their head. It's to be expected. After all, they've been gone for a few years. It's only natural they'd be this feeble. Tuck some hair behind their ear. Being raised away, across the seas, forced into life of oppression, what is to be expected? Sure, their eyes narrow sharply at a certain individual in the crowds, sitting. Hiss, calm, clear their throat. They've had some form of training by the Hamado, but it still limited them. Their lifestyle, their roots taken from them, snatched away. They sniff, dabbing their eyes tenderly, with a voice to match. I can still remember. This was a surprise. The hero wasn't expecting this from them. This is new, coming from you. With a brow arched, showing such tenderness, still, their eyes turn back to the American children, to a particular one. That doesn't excuse their weakness. From where I stand, it seems to me their power is diluted. Apparently, it seems so. They have nothing to offer and neither do you. You're wasting my time. I'd be better off with, they point one of the other American children. Them, clearly they've inherited a powerful quirk. It was passed down well. Remaining calm from the hero's words, give a small laughter with an edge. I can see how you would see that. True, they look to the same person as the hero. Their eyes narrow hard. Smirk. Their quirk is powerful, I won't lie, but if you recall it from time before, it also fell flat. It became weak, which is why they never made it to the hero level. Remember, that was true. How could the pro hero forget? What a waste. Grunt, look back to the first one their turquoise eyes laid on. Good. So, they inch closer slightly to the flamed hero, being careful as well respectful. Back to the matter at hand. What if I could get them to untap what they have suppressed? They just need a little push to unlock it. Get through that maze and burst out. Then what you consider. I promise you will not be disappointed. The hero's stern face cracked a small smirk. Fell flat at what they saw. What about them? Pointed with their words. They seem rather fond of that boy. Turning to who the hero was talking about, that green-haired boy. Bare their teeth to the side. They nearly forgot, of course they would. How could they forget that as part of their equation? That attachment clearly was biting their nail. How to explain this right here, before them would ruin everything. They couldn't have it. No, they couldn't. No need to worry, they simply say. Confidently, it's merely nothing. Just a flux, which can easily be seared. They hold up 2 fingers, cut the air. There is nothing to concern yourself over. Now, back to that demonstration. I have it place if you'd like. So I saw, they managed to take a rather good hit on them. The hero said, cause them damage. Then again, I shouldn't be surprised the way in which you have them. Quite the conflict. What could they say with a proud smirk? I just wanted to ensure they had to prove themselves, each of them. The same with you, sort of. So, they chipper. You will see that the stock is well and strong. To your liking. Even after all these years, I present you a proud mare. Afterwards, they start walking away. We can discuss further details. The hero wasn't done. Wait. They stop and turn to the hero. Yes, how will you take charge? Again, should I consider this, since you are not the one who has it? Those words ran with bitter truth. The hero waited for their answer. Saw it on the smirk that curled there on their lips. The same one as before, meaning they had it figured out. Do not, they tap their lip lightly. Smile. I have that covered. With a wave to the hero returned back to their seat. The second round of the festival was to begin shortly. Those who made it remained in the arena. During this time Leo gathered everyone together. All right, he began strategizing. The evening about to start, we weren't fully prepared for the last one. Kind of blew us up by surprise. Mikey snickered behind his hand, nudged you. You join him a bit. April shot you whipped glance, stopping you and Mikey. Leo continued. Though we don't know the next one, all I know is that we've got to stay together. He was serious, looking at everyone. This element is new to us, all of us. It's best if we stay together. Sorry we left you too. He looked to you and April. It's fine. April told him casually. Pulled you in. We got each other, so there's nothing to worry about. That was good to hear. I know, he kept going. But we work better as a team. We can't leave each other behind. If we want to make to the next event. Everyone's really pumped. They want to each being the top. Quite frankly, Raph butted in, snarling, surveying sharply the others who made it, each of them mingling and congratulating the other on making it, some with nervous looks on their faces. The weak ones, he figured, easy to take out. We shouldn't be here. None of this should matter. Being looked at. He paused, huffed, crossed his arms, opened his mouth, but no words formed. You reached out to him. Raphael, you said softly. He turned a shoulder to you and the others. Mumbled, it's nothing. Let's just get this stuff done and over with. Everyone exchanged looks. Clearing his throat, Leo began again. So, as I was saying, frankly, we have a better chance staying together. We don't know much about everyone, but from what we've seen so far. His eyes bounced to a few others. We've got quite a few strong opponents who crossed before us. We might have made it, but that still doesn't mean we're solid. Not to mention we're still, he looked at his brothers, trying to get an understanding with our own quirks, which we still need work on. We've gotten better with them if it wasn't for father. That's our little hiccup. Other than that, we're pretty well oiled. As long as we stay together. Father did say the next event majority of the time involves a group. So, this is how it should be done. He looked to you first. You provide the protection. Got it. You nodded. Yes, I do. He smirked, moved to Mikey. Mikey, you've got to work in sync, sort of. You've got to make sure our way is clear. Aye aye. Mikey saluted. Cheekily. Donnie was next. Donnie, Leo gave it a thought. Donnie's shoulders and head dropped a bit. You can, he gave it further thought. The tall turtle postured, stooped. Eyes caught it, a smile curled on their lips. Leo was still trying to figure out what use Donnie for. The longer he did, the more Donnie's shoulders dropped. April stepped in. Donnie can be our surprise, she suggested. Leo looked at her, then to his brother, then back to her, gave it a thought, nodded. April patted Donnie's shoulder. He gave her a weak, thankful smile. Now, she took over, looked to Raph, who remained moody. You're our best to deliver some attacks. We'll go together. Actually, Leo took over. April, you can be our satellite. Excuse me. Her eyes stared at him flatly with a brow arched and stern look in her eyes. Come again. Feeling her flare, stepped between her and Leo, who stepped back, quickly made his words understandable. What I meant was, use your telepathy to read the minds of others. Anyone who gets close enough. That way we have sort of an advantage. Come. You whisper to April, patting her cheeks lightly. Smiling, her eyes fall to you. You kept your smile up. Better? She nodded. Yeah, I suppose. All right, she agreed with Leo. Makes sense. Mikey though gave it his own thought and interjected. Wouldn't it better if, well, May was the heavier hitter than Raph? I mean, he looked to his brother then to you. She does repel better. Raph will just burn everything. Raph pounced. Enough. Leo stepped in, stopping the action. Addressed Mikey's thought. That is true, but we need the protection, so May is better doing that. Though May, if you can, maybe switch it up. You frowned, looking down, twiddling your fingers. Well, April stepped in, pulling you behind her. Before you could finish, a fixed stare on Leo. Brows nodded. Leo, she hissed softly, between her teeth. Why would you ask that? He held up his hands. It's a thought, she doesn't have to do it. And yeah, I know. So calm down. I don't mind. You speak up. Yes, you do. April spoke for you. You can't do that, so it's out of the question. Turned around to you. Okay, you said nothing. Her voice rose. Okay. Slowly you nodded. Yes, I do. Sorry. April's eyes softened, rested a hand on your shoulder. Sorry, I didn't mean to get like that. It's okay. You clasped your hands together, smiled. You are just worried, which is correctly understandable. There is no need to worry. I shall not do such a thing. Glad to hear. A slow smile stretched on April. Good. So, she turned to Leo. That's our plan. He nodded. Yeah, it should work. Decid, your hand shot up. Yes. He pointed at you. Can we include Izuku-chan? You gushed, with wide starry eyes. Can we, please? It would be very wonderful if we do include him. I know he will benefit from us and will truly be a wonderful addition. Plus Raph's head whipped around to you. Heated glare. No, he said flatly. Your joy blew away. We're not including some outsider. Beautier mumble. It would be. No, he snapped. Took a breath. Calmed down, clearing his throat. I mean, no, it just wouldn't be right. Folded his arms. It's best if we just stick together. We've done back home. We keep it going now. Like Leo said, we follow his idea. His plan. Nothing else. We have a better chance on surviving all ... His waves a hand around. This, he had a point ... but ... you still. Raph, Donnie speaks up. It's not like it was back home. You don't have to be so hostile about it. May just wanted to include someone. That's all. We'll eventually have to accept this. All of this, right? He looked to Leo. Yeah, Leo agreed. But Raph has a point too. If we want to make to the next event, we've got to stick together. Inviting someone else, well, sorry May. Your shoulders slumped. Nod your head slowly. April and Mikey came and patted your back, comforting. It did little, but someone's voice taking the stage and crowd brought you back. The first games for the first years is finally over. Midnight took the stage and attention. All heads and eyes turned attention to her and on her. And what a game it was. Your heart quickened at the sight of her. Lay a hand over your heart, another on your heated cheeks that burned. Fix your attention on her, lips parted and wide eyes. She was just so the way she stood so strong and the confidence that radiated off it was just. Your heart pounded against your chest. That smile, it was everything faded around you. Only midnight stood before you in a spotlight that your mind conjured up. She was even more glorious. Shivers ran down your body. You yelped silently. If you could just just somehow remain aware instead of distracted, you would have known and noticed a figure approach you. They raised a hand and shoved your shoulder. Barked, "Hey, you." A deep, aggressive voice spoke. To the point it almost sounded like yelling. They shoved you again. You stumbled a bit forward. Luckily you caught yourself. Turn around, flinch a bit with a step back. Find furrowed red eyes glaring at you from that loud and rather explosive blonde spiky-haired boy. The boy who snapped at you back on the bus for the field trip. You weren't what his name was. Bakubaka. Give it a thought. Hey. His voice snapped you back. Jabbed a finger in your shoulder. Your hand itched to reach, but you kept down. Are you deaf or something? Didn't you hear me? He stepped forward, towering over you. You said nothing, but stared at him, furthering his scowl deeper. God, you Americans are stupid. He growled. What did he say? Your eyes narrow a bit. He ignored it. Or maybe it's just you, he said. Pointed a finger in your face. Listen, face floor. That wasn't your name, and it was a weird name to say the least. He kept going. You raised a hand to open your mouth. He smacked your hand back down. I didn't like what you said earlier. He stepped forward, leaning further over you. His shadow nearly covered you. Whatever came out of your mouth was stupid. You're gonna owe me for that comment. Owe him? What in the world? You're gonna carry me for the cavalry battle. I don't know what the hell your quirk actually is. I don't really care. If it can serve me getting to the top, then it's mine. Understand? Honestly, you didn't. But one thing was sure, the way he looked at you and the way he talked to you was unsettling. Also, your eyes crossed for a moment in thought. Look up to him. Cavalry battle. What is your mouth pouring out? Were you joking? He looked at you confused for a moment. You were serious about this. Growled. Serious? What is going on? You look around, noticing everyone pairing up with others. Also you were by yourself. Wait. You gasped, realizing others pairing up. The next event of the festival was forming. The others, April, Leo, and the guys weren't around. You did it again. Slapping yourself mentally. Scan for the others, run off. Excuse myself, you call to the boy. But I must find my friends. Goodbye, Baka. Baka, what did you just Bakugou flared? That's not my name. You damn idiot, face floor. You're dead. You hear me? You didn't. Your mind was on finding the others. How did you miss out the whole speech and explanation of the second event of the festival? While you looked for the others, managed to get bits and pieces of this cavalry battle. Students must form teams of either 2 or 5. There was one rider and the rest the horse. Every student was given a point value on a white headband. You wondered what this was on your head. Your points, 210. That seemed like a good number. Anyway, back to finding the others, with further information being said about the event. Apparently, this next part, after forming teams, they would go after one others and steal their headbands to accumulate more points. In 30 minutes, one could not allow the other teams to fall on purpose. It seemed understandable. Searching still for any sign of April or the others. The team had to be made. All of you or some of you had to stick together and you stop. Find the guys, all 4 of them together. Donnie was on top as the rider. They had their teams. Your stomach wrenched. Maybe there was still April. Sure, I'll join. You hear her. Turn around, find her walking off with Yurakaka. Your heart dropped. What was going on? One-chan. Call after her. She stopped and turned to you. May. What is it? Your chin trembled. I thought we were to remain together. Remember the plan. Plan? April repeated back. What plan? The one that all of us came up together for the second event. We would stay together. You remind her. Lean in. Holding your eyes to hers. That was the plan. April tilted her head a bit. She shrugged her shoulders. I don't remember. Your face fell. Look, I'm going with Yurakaka, all right. For this round, but I promise you, next event we'll team up. All right. A small gasp escaped from your lips. April wasn't sure what was with your look of shock. Patted your shoulder. Told you to hurry up and find someone others. Walked off with Yurakaka, wishing you good luck. She left you there by yourself. Your mind called out to her in hopes she'd hear, but she didn't. She didn't turn back, not even once. One-chan, you mumble softly. Reach out. Sister. Not too far. A pair of black eyes noticed the lonely pink-haired girl behind their messy gray hair. Their heart leaped, rushed color to their cheeks. Something their teammates noticed. Looked up at them, then to what held their fixed attention. You want to add her. She's from one class, that American student. We should leave her alone. No, they shouted. We're adding her to our team. They jumped off without a second thought, hurried over to you, stopped dead in their tracks when her eyes briefly looked in their direction, whipped around and hurried back to their teammates, who shook their heads. Everyone was being taken. Who could you join with? April was with someone. The guys with each other and you all alone. You had to find someone, but who? Everyone you knew. They were holding a hand to your chest. Someone noticed you out the corner of their eyes. It surprised them. Seeing you alone, they expected you with the others. The other Americans. Not by yourself. If you were by yourself, then they give a moment remembering your quirk. It was pretty good. It could work well with them. Provide protection like it did back at the USJ. Musing it over, a figure approached you, reached a hand out. Excuse me, a familiar mellow voice that turned your head, fine steely, heavy-lidded silver eyes, and a shaky hand out. Of a boy, either your age or a year younger, with short wavy glossy, dark silver hair. Yes, you asked, taking a step back. Oh, he chuckled nervously, scratching his cheek with a small grin. Sorry, didn't mean to do that. He slouched, with a shrug. You're eyed this boy, this rather lax boy. I saw you by yourself. Well, actually I saw you during the race. I helped you up, after you got shot down. It took you a moment, but it was him. That voice. He helped you up, presented a hand to you. Oh, yes, hello. You smile. Their lips push a smile. Yeah, hey, I was afraid you'd forgotten me. It's cool seeing you all right. Kind of had me worried. You'd be too injured. You wouldn't make it to the next event. That thought bummed me out. Oh, well, I assure you that I am well and fine. Thank you for your concern. Their smile spread further on their light brown face. Leaned in a bit. Yeah, chuckled. That's good. I wanted to make sure you got here. I can finally get my chance. Chance? You repeat. He nodded. Yeah, that maybe we could team up. Seems like you and I are the only ones who haven't found anyone. That was true. Yes, your shoulders fall a bit. So it seems. A team with us seems well. Really? Sweet? Yeah, alright. He held a hand out. Cool, name's Jun. By the way, it was a few years ago two children ran hand in hand together, as fast as their tired, sore little feet could carry them across the cold, hard floor. As far away from this dark place as they could, but every twist and turn they made, every decision they did, lead to a dead end. Still, their hands held tighter, wouldn't stop. They'd find a way out of this craze of a maze. There had to be a way. Even the creeping fear of the unknown was around each corner. They had to be ready. They couldn't be scared. Show a single thing. With eyes up high, meticulously watching them, every movement they made, judging their performance. Another pair eyes watched them as well. The children didn't stop. They couldn't, no matter how trying their legs became. For if they did, then it was a thought that sent a fearing shiver down their spine. The one in the front, leading them, braved the unknown, while the one behind quivered. Tears began rising in their silver eyes, moved a hand to wipe them. It jerked, warning them not to do it, to show it. Otherwise they'd have to face it. Understanding, they choked and swallowed back their tears. Crying wasn't going to do a single thing. Doing this, they had to be numb, become numb and focused. Fade everything out, every single thing. It was the only way to get through. Even if it hurt. At least, their silver eyes dropped to the held hands. They had each other. Yeah, they had each other, always and forever. They could get through this. They'd get out of this maze. They'd get through anything. And that's what they thought. Find out it was all a lie. All of it. How foolish they were 2 years ago to have such an idiotic idea. It was quite clear they were the weakest. They left everything. Which was good. They managed to find their own way out of everything, become strong, if not stronger, numb themselves to everything, faded everything out, the same as them. In their new life, new family, they numbed their past, faded it out, repelled it, like the selfish bastard they became. All smiles, all goodness, all new friends, all the things that was sickening. If they could spit, it'd be acid. How their very nerve itched to beat them down, to just keep punching them over and over, again and again. A smile on their face and in their eyes. It would be glorious. They wouldn't be able to repel anything. They became too weak over the years. They didn't deserve anything, that traitor. But, unlike that traitor who fled, they did not and stayed. Became stronger, better. Became fueled with a power that provided them with a higher level. The traitor might be older, but that meant nothing. It meant nothing at all. What mattered was subjecting them to a world of hurt and pain. They would take away what the traitor held dear, and laugh with joy as they broke before them, leave them empty and oh so much more. But that would have to wait. For now, they had another task given. They had to follow. It pissed them off. Even after all this years, the traitor was still looked as needed. It made no sense. It made none at all. The more they thought of it, the more enraged they became. Taking a breath, calmed themselves. It wasn't time yet. They had to stay to the task at hand. show they were better. They'd would drop their eyes to their hand for a moment, wondered for a moment, a brief moment, if the traitor might just know. They hiss, clench their hand, sentiment would get them nowhere. Nowhere at all. Return their focus back, it was about to start. The next event was going to start. Everyone, every student that made it gathered and picked out their teams. It surprised Izuku really, that April decided to join him. Not that he wasn't grateful or anything. It was just no one really wanted to join him due to his high points and the target he wore both literally and figuratively. She didn't seem to mind, stating it wouldn't be fun if it wasn't a challenge. The confidence was amazing, but something puzzled Izuku's mind. "Hey, April," he asked. She looked to him. "What about May? I thought you both would be paired up together." April crossed her arms. "I can understand why you would think that, but May will be fine. Don't worry, we can't always be together. Besides, this is a contest or something." She shrugged, smirking. "Kind of need to take risk in order to get ahead, right?" Those weren't the words he expected to hear from her. It sounded rather different, if not off. No doubt May was bothered by her sister's choice. Musing his thoughts, Izuku wasn't sure if April should be here with him or not. But it seemed as though she didn't want to change her mind. Also, he didn't want her changing his, if she could do that. Still, he looked across the teams, his eyes searched for something pink. No, not Mina, a darker, mild pink color. Or those bright eyes and smile, which he prepared himself to see misty and heavy. Saw nothing. He didn't see her or anything. He did though feel eyes, sharp piercing eyes coming from where? Sent a cold shiver down his spine. Those eyes he felt were Izuku. April's voice cut through. He shifted his eyes back to her and the rest of his team, consisting of Uraraka, April, Toyoyami, and May from support. A crazed, who loved her baby's gadgets and didn't seem to understand the meaning of personal space. "Ready?" He nodded, climbed up to be levitated by April on all four of them. She and the others would carry him. Nervous, Izuku readied himself. A smirk on. April got herself ready, looked to Uraraka who held the same expression. Both girls give one another thumbs up. Leo and his brothers were ready too. Donnie was on top. They'd carry him. "We've got to get to the next event, be focused," Leo said. "Right." They agree. Everyone was getting ready, though with 5, some with 4, 3, and 2. Only a few with 2, Kirby noticed. He also noticed to his surprise May and April weren't together. Odd. He understood why the Turtle brothers remained together, he was just surprised his daughters didn't. Also, who they chose. April with the green-haired boy, brown-haired girl, boy with a dark bird's head, and a girl with salmon-pink dreadlocks wearing red and gold steampunk-like goggles and other gadgets. While May paired herself with Kirby shot up from his spot, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was impossible, there was just no way that it couldn't be. He squinted his eyes. It was a little hard to tell. The boy had his back slightly turned away from the man. But the hair, there was no mistaking it. That hair color was still same. Meaning, and this was just a hunch, if that boy was, then that meant that no. He told himself, again, they couldn't be here. The boy now lived with a good family and everything was well. It was, Kibri made sure of it. Retook his seat. Eyes watched him with a smirk and dark vengeful thoughts. Enjoying the cold trembles from the man. It was hard not to laugh. Now, back to the second event. Their eyes attentive to a particular team. It had better go well. They'd better get to the next and final round to showcase what they had. Otherwise their reputation would be ruined, and that would not have that. Not in the least. Hopefully their years apart hadn't diluted them. "Hopefully, you okay?" Jun asked, looking up to you sitting on his shoulders. "Up there?" You said nothing. He noticed this distance and clouded gaze in you had. Like something held you. "Hey." He bounced his shoulders up and down, brining you back. "You okay up there?" Blinking a few times, rubbing them, nod. "Yes, forgive me. I was just dreaming in day of light." He chuckled. "You mean daydreaming, right?" You nod. "Really, what was it? It must have been interesting if you zoned out for that long." A downcast expression swept your face. "Well, I do not really know. It was dark. Trembles ran along your body. There was running and buzz." The alarm blared. Time was up in making the teams. Everyone should be with someone. It was time to begin the next Cavalry battle. Up in the commentator box, Aizawa had nodded off. Hey, look alive." President Mike tapped him a bit. Aizawa woke up. After 15 minutes of teammates to talk strategy, 14 Cavalry teams are prepared to go head-to-head. Indeed, it seemed. Leaning forward a bit, Aizawa was little surprised at the team-ups. "I see some unexpected student combinations." "Come on." President Mike rallied. "Get your hands up in the air, it's time for Arena of UA Showdown. Let me hear you scream." The crowd roared with thrill. They couldn't wait. Pumped, hearts of students pounded against their chest. Some kept their cool, others their focus, repeating the strategy once again in their mind. While looking at whom to go after first, it was quite obvious many eyes targeted Izuku. Even without using her quirk, April could see it in their eyes. The moment it would be time to start, she knew what she'd do. Hopefully it'd help. Leo geared himself ready. It was tempting to after Izuku, mostly everyone would. No doubt, getting to him would almost be like a wild fight. Everyone would be gunning, they just needed to take a few headbands. He and his brother's points together equaled a good amount. Was it enough? He wasn't sure. Was Momo okay? No. He flushed a bit. Now was not the time to be thinking of something like that. Head in the game. Head in the game. He nearly shouted in his mind. Focus. He had to remain focused and clear-minded. Looking to his brothers, Donnie kept wiping his brow, fanning himself. Mikey just kept grinning and waving, others in the stand not a surprise. Lastly, Raph, well, he had an intense fevered stare locking on a particular ash blonde. If Raph could shot fire from his eyes, he would. At least he was well focused in a way. Leo just hoped he'd stay focused enough and not let his own anger wouldn't become his only focus. Otherwise it'd cost them. All of them. Leo knew they had to make their father proud and the name they carried. Though he didn't have super hearing, he knew murmurs whispered through the crowd. The name Hamato, it held honor, though he wondered for a moment what else it held. You wondered, rubbing your arm, pulling on it a little, why April and the others. Mainly April, though, brushed you off. The plan. Not that you didn't mind Jun, you just well wanted your sister. Your mind buzzed. Was it something you said? Would she and the others make to the next round? Hopefully they did. Should you go after them? Honestly, you didn't know. You didn't really have a plan. Despite Jun formulating one, you had tuned it out. Jun kind of figured, with your slight stooped posture and gaze that flit around the arena at the others. Stopping for a moment, lingering on April's team and the guys, watched your eyes fall to the side. Being like that wasn't good, it was going to drag you and him down. Hey, he called. You look at him. He gave a half smile. You gotta get through this. I mean, we gotta get through this. To make it to the next round, so we can compete. He was right. A part of you did want to go to the next round and maybe the others would make it. Yes, you agree. I do wish to make it, so we can compete. Your smile returned, Jun's curled. I shall provide the protection we need. Tighten the headband a bit more, get your game face on. While also praying for the others, April, the guys and pretty much everyone to be well. President Mike started the countdown, mixed in with the cheering of the crowd, the moment he said one. Midnight shouted, begin. Many of the teams charged straight for Izuku, thinking quickly. April activated her quirk, looked swiftly at the teams coming, smirked to herself, so that was their plan. One though, caught her attention, alerted Izuku. Hey. He looked to her quickly, she nudged her head towards Tetsu's team, mainly at the pale-skinned boy, with the teeth slits on either with no discernible lips, giving a skull-like appearance. The ground. We've got to move. Midoriya. Takoyami called. What is your move? That was easy. Izuku knew what to do. That's easy. We're running away. I don't think so. Tetsu shouted. Using a foot, the pale-skinned boy, just as April found out and wished Izuku would have been quicker with his decision, softened the ground where they stood. Trapping them, they began sinking. Struggling seemed to make the sinking faster. April, Yurikara called to her. See, can you? More focused on freeing herself, April knew what Yurikara was asking. There was just a problem. Her mind was more focused on this, which wasn't going so well. Remembering the jetpack. From May, Izuku activates it and managed to him and his team out and airborne. That didn't stop Gyro. She tired using her earphone jacks to attack them. With his dark shadow, Toyoyami blocked her. Damn, she hissed. A hand came and behind her team, reached out to the headband. Toru shrieked. Hey. Gyro and team whipped their heads around, moved just in time. The hand barely grazed the headband. Thankfully, it wasn't snatched off. Still, the fact they came up so silently and nearly ... that was a close call. Leo smirked and charged with his brothers, minus Donnie's frantic pleads to be careful, at Gyro and her team. They were quick. Gyro saw it. They worked well ... like an oiled machine. They stayed on her team like a missile. Donnie had his hand out, almost snatched the headband, if Toru hadn't leaned back. Keep it up. Raph pushed harder. Hurry up, Donnie. Get the damn thing. I am trying, Raph. Donnie shouted back, throwing his hands rapidly. Toru managed to duck just time. Gyro and the others kept pushing back, remaining on the run. But she keeps moving. Of course, Toru claimed. I don't want you to get it. She shirked, ducking down. The tail of her headband remained up. Donnie saw his opening and snatched it right off. Yeah, he boomed, holding it up. Got it. Toru freaked, touching all around her head. The headband was gone. No, she whined. Mikey winked. Thanks. Donnie secured the headband on his head with his own. Counted the points mentally. Smiled big. Hey, we just need, like 2 more and we're good. We'll make it. Yeah. Mikey thrusted a fist up. Let's go after his eyes search, find their next target. Them. Leo looked, shook his head. No, everyone's going after him. We need to stay in a reasonable and realistic approach. We stick with the plan, sneak up and snatch. With everyone's attention geared there, we come in and take theirs. We might not have the shadows, but we have the stealth. We're Goy. That one. Raph growled. Leo looked to see who he was talking about. It was him. We go after that arrogant punk. Thinks he's better than me. I'll show him. He began to flare. Snatch any chance he has to making to the next round. Stupid Americans, huh? He scoffed. Leo tried to calm him. Raph, let's not focus on that, right? Okay. It fell on deaf ears. Raph's eyes burned with anger. No, he roared, changing course, charged towards Bakugou's team like a charging bull. A blazing charging bull. Left scorched marks behind them, others moved out the way. Just in time. Donnie screamed from the burning pain, while Leo and Mikey did their best to try and keep up, only to stumble a bit. Leo barked at Raph to stop, but his hot-headed brother didn't. A hot white glow in his eyes, instead of green, barged his way straight forward. Hey, Raph yelled across the arena. Hey, I'm talking to you, you cheap rate, firecracker. Like a hurricane, Bakugou whipped his head around, burning eyes locked with Raph's. Roared back. What did you call me? Damn American. Huh? Oh no. Donnie whimpered, grabbing onto Mikey. Screamed. Raph, stop. He wasn't the only one either. From Bakugou's team, Kirishima tried to talk some sense into him, but just like Raph, it wasn't heard. Both of them changed course and charged at each other. Their uproar nearly filled the stadium. Heads turned and eyes widened from others. Watched the two raging students collide explosively. It was nearing high noon in New York. Iwaza stood in the empty open lot a couple of feet of the American teenagers, the Hamato brothers and the two O'Neill sisters. The sisters, the only two human-looking compared to their turtle friends. It was assessment of their quirks, part of the requirement not to mention to register their quirks. Clearly they were using them well illegally. Of course they wouldn't know, why should they? After all, their master should have informed them. Guess it just somehow slipped his mind. Tired and unmotivated in doing this, Iwaza had no choice, since he was chosen for this special assignment, his ass. The American teens stood there waiting. It was clear to see each their personalities by the way they stood and looked. The turtle with the red had a scowl harder than steel and eyes hotter than fire. So much disrespect, yet crafted discipline in them, sort of. Those light green eyes bared hard at Iwaza, who clearly didn't care at all the way he looked. Unfazed, really. Better get this started, Iwaza said to himself. Raised a hand and pointed a finger to Leo. He was first. Raised his voice so they could hear him. Come on, let's begin. You're going first. Leo swallowed, gave a light nod, stepped forward. Leader clearly, Iwaza observed, noticing Leo's stalling breathing and slight trembling limbs. His quirk was an interesting one, befitting for him. It made sense that he have it. Watching Leo display his quirk a bit badly, but it went somewhat well. Somewhat, wrote it down while also making sure it was recorded. Next, Raph, who was shoved forward by Leo. The delinquent brother dragged his feet, but came. His scrunched face hadn't left smoothed over, arms crossed. Tempted, he seemed to flick Iwaza off, though it would be hard to tell, with 3 fingers and all. Setting up the camera, he was ready to see it. The others watched and waited. The pink-haired one, May, floated instead of standing. Seemed to be a habit of hers. Anyway, back to Raph. 5 minutes passed and he still hadn't shown his quirk. It wasn't suppressed, so there was no reason not to show it. Sighing in his scarf, Iwaza knew there was one way in getting it out. Having noticed it when he went to the family. Clearing his throat, shuffled the words in his mind, found them. Opened his mouth, spoke them. The second they hit Raph's ears, a sort of light green flicker emerged from his chest into a blaze of fire surrounding him. His eyes turned hot white. The others stepped back, avoiding the flames Raph's body emitted. But it didn't save them from the rising heat and the waves it radiated. Iwaza had to give himself some distance, quite powerful. Wild too. It fit Raph well. The flames rose higher and higher. With Raph's emotions, the ground and air began to sizzle. It only stopped from 2 things. One, when May's yelps were heard did the flames settle, and second, when Iwaza stepped in and cancelled his quirk. A quirk like his was, well, untamed. Watched his 2 hot-headed students charge one another from where he sat in the announcer box. Like bulls, Bakugou and Raph went head-on despite the silent protest of their teams. They threw themselves at each other, only seeing the other and no one else. There was a simmering dislike between them. He caught the side glances they gave one another. In class, on the bus, all in one day, really. Now, it was coming out. All of it, well, hopefully not all of it. Raph with his flamed aura, Bakugou with his explosions. Rushed and bounced back. Wait, what? Their attack just bounced back? No, it didn't bounce back, they recoiled. But by who? What was strong enough to bounce back two strong attacks like that? Searching the teams, Iwaza saw who it was. He should have known better. That light golden yellow flash. There was only person he knew in his class that could produce protection and use energy colored like that. May, finding her with that boy. Her glowing hand out in the direction of Bakugou and Raph, not too far but enough to where she wasn't that much noticed. She cast it pretty well. Any second later there was no doubt both teams would have been out. Girl was rather quick. Iwaza had to give her that, and that fierce calm look she had on was uncanny. The way her glowing eyes locked on her protection. Guess she wasn't as clueless as he thought. Then again, the written assessment did say otherwise even if her demeanor said otherwise. She kept the shield or whatever it was up. It left both hot heads stunned and confused. It was a good thing they hadn't noticed the refraction of it. But someone did. Sticking a hand out, Bakugou touched the air, felt something solid. Thin but solid. What the hell? He growled, placed a whole hand on it, saw what it was. He knew that color. Whipped his head around, locked his eyes on his new target. Not too far away, their hands still out emitting the barrier. Damn face floor. He hollered. Think you can protect your damn Americans? You wanna get in this? Then fine. He slammed his hand on the barrier, blasted it, shattering it. You'll take his beating then. Get her. He ordered his team. For a second they were hesitant but do as he said. Bakugou was coming and he was coming fast. You hadn't expected this. You just just reacted and well now he was charging at you instead. He blew and shattered your barrier like it was nothing. Then again it wasn't strong. Still the fact he noticed it wasn't good. No wonder your heart was racing, wanting to explode. He looked like some sort of madman, crazed man coming at you. Your mind couldn't get itself straight on what to do. Not that you weren't used to others coming at you, they didn't really charge. The ones you and the others went up against came fast but with finesse. You could read their movements. This was nothing, no sort of form. No nothing. Just raw and emotions. Emotions so strong, you couldn't get a hold on them. You had tired to get a sort of read on his aura to be overpowered by it. But you held yourself together, you had to be quick, very quick or die. Bakugou roared, threw a hand at you. You had just a second to think. A second was Bakugou needed. Blasted you. He smirked, then frowned. Disappointed. Weak. Jun chuckled. A slight shiver went down Bakugou's spine. His eyes wide for a second. Through the smoke he was sure for just a moment saw a smile, a twisted dark smile that seemed unnatural. It echoed softly, faded when the smoke fell. Into his surprise, you there, arms crossed unaffected from the blasted attack, encased in a sphere shield that had just a very small hairline crack that quickly healed. You managed to produce a shield just in time. He hadn't expected that, nor the strange look in your eyes that locked with his, a look that seemed contrast to the eyes you normally had. They glowed, but there was this sort of darkness in them. He wasn't sure, or it could just be the markings etching themselves slowly on you. That grew speed the moment you opened your mouth. Took a breath. He knew what was coming next. I don't think so. Threw a hand, ignited another blast. The second the word left your lips. Reacted with this blast. Blasted you and Jun away from him and his team. Thinking quickly, Jun dug his heels in and just barely managed to prevent you and him from falling out of the event. That was close. Catch your breath. Your shield still up. It had a good amount of cracks in them. A good amount. It didn't shatter, but his attack was powerful. Thank goodness you managed to get distance from him. If you had time to just finish saying what you needed to say before he blasted it, then he would have been the one blasted back. But he knew which wasn't good. Hey, Jun's voice cut through, getting your attention. His silver eyes stare up at you. For a moment you found yourself lost in them and thought you saw something that seemed familiar. What was it? You okay? Jun's words snapped you back. You ready to go? You give a slight nod. You sure? You see a bit lost. Just wanted to make sure you're with me. Can't lose you again. The way he said it was rather off-sitting. But not much to think about. Yes, I am. You get yourself back. Now, let us complete this event. We need another one to make to the next event. A curled smile on his lips. Jun couldn't agree more. Disappointing, how disappointing. Their sharp golden yellow eyes simmered with it. Started to flare despite the smooth calmness their face expressed. Every second they sat in the crowds watching them below, embarrassed themselves, being almost easily dispatched by those of lesser abilities than their own. Watching them just scratch the surface of their potential took every ounce of them not to rise out of their seat, shout from the crowd at them. It took even more restraint to not get up and go over Kirby, that damn man, and end him for all he know. They fume. Not just him but her as well. What they did. Taking away what wasn't theirs to begin with and converting them into this disappointment before them. Their performance so far wasn't living up to anything they expected, nor. Their eyes slide back to the flame hero lock with his turquoise one, gritted with disappointed the same as their golden ones. He expected to see something so far. But there was nothing being shown. Breaking from him, look back to the cavalry battle. Become further frustrated at what they just did. They nearly shot from their seat. Holding it back. Take a few breaths. Now wasn't the time. It wasn't. Smooth themselves out. Relax. Raise a hand and rest on the small head sitting next to them that remained still. Gently yet chilling, stroke the top of their hair softly with a light pat. Pay close attention, child. You see it as well as I. They are lost and misguided. Just look how flawed they've become. A hard sigh falls from their lips. Be thankful that you have not been separated from me. They have our blood running through their veins, yet it's been tainted through ideology that is false and weak. Do you understand? They asked. Small eyes watch their lips as they speak. Raise a small finger, give 2 taps on the arm of the chair. With a nod. They were glad to hear. Pat them a few more times. Good, good. Now, let us finish the rest of this. Disappointment. Turn their eyes back to the remaining time of the cavalry battle. So far, from what Kirby saw in Splinter, their children were doing well. A few times almost got eliminated. Leo's team was almost blindsided by the team with the young man who turned his whole body into metal. He almost rammed them. Luckily, Mikey was able to get them out of it in the nick of time. With Leo's quirk, which he seemed to have a slight trouble concentrating with all the ruckus going on around him, he just managed to pull through ... just a bit and provide swift capture of another headband. Raph's quirk helped out too, with it being the offense slightly burning others, being careful as he could get without going to wildfire on others, used his heat to immediate others or throwing them off their balance. It worked well when all of them worked together. Donnie, who rode, just kept the headband safe. He hadn't displayed his quirk yet. From the look of his downcast face, it spoke something else. Iwaza noticed. With Izuku's team, they had to keep moving with many hot on their tails. Utilizing her telepathy, April was able to give sort of an advantage, figuring out what others wanted to do. Giving their mind a quick and brief scan at the one she managed to lock eyes with for a second, sort of preventing any element of surprise, especially with Shoto's team, who remained hot on Izuku's team trail. The only way they managed to avoid capture, staying on Shoto's left side and April's extra help. With only one hover boot still intact and the jetpack now fried thanks to Kaminari unleashing his volts, left them sitting ducks. With another electric blast unleashed coming their way, almost struck if not for Takoyami's dark shadow taking it. Poor thing got hurt. That wasn't all either. To make matters even more, how to put it, barricaded Shoto formed a large circular ice wall that caved them in, blocking them from getting out. It pushed the team to the end of the field. If they hadn't stopped quickly, they surely would have been out. Luckily, that wasn't the case. The only thing right now was how to get out of here, being cornered by Shoto's team and avoid the headband from being taken. Ideas ran through each of their minds. Izuku's the most. One thought that did and stuck with Izuku was the only choice. His team would be alright. Staying on Shoto's left side and keeping their distance. Remaining focused on Shoto, Izuku spoke to April. April, her eyes quickly lifted to him, then back down, sidestepping for a second when Shoto's team moved towards them. Can we talk? Understanding, she nodded, eyes flashed a blue hue. They could talk. Shot, she said. Do you think you can keep us on Shoto's left side? He inquired. She wasn't following, he further explained. What he came up with it. She was surprised for a moment, yet equally approving. Nodded, gave him a wink, turned a smirk to Shoto's team. A smirk that was noticed. What is she smirking about? Kaminari pondered out loud. A question that Ida answered. They've formulated a plan. Eyes fall to him for a moment. He continued. April's dual quirk allows her to communicate with the mind. The way her blue eyes flash an equally blue hue for that brief second means she and Izuku just talk. And should it do it again like it did just now, she no doubt informed everyone of some sort of plan they will doing. If I'm to guess, they'll be using April for it. Shoto listened carefully. One thing stuck out from what Ida said. Dual quirk. She has two. Ida nodded. Yes, I believe she called it mind over matter, something like that. The second part of her quirk, besides communicating with the mind as well reading them, she can also move things too, expel them away. That part of her quirk is rather versatile. Back at USJ she used to increase her movements. Meeting. She can most likely do the same with her team. Shoto concluded. Do you know how long it will last and how you can tell when she's about to use it? Ida quickly glanced at April, locked eyes for less than a second. Damn, April hissed. I'm not sure, he admitted. All I know is that her eyes glow blue, though instead of flashing the blue hue they stay longer. Her hand does glow with a faint blue outline and possibly whatever she is about to move. Kaminari scoffed a bit, resisted throwing his head back and laughing it away. Seriously, that should be easy. We can see her coming and know what she's doing. We can't. Momo burst his assumption. He looked to her. Didn't you hear what Ida said? Her other part of her quirk, she can communicate with her mind and read them. So, even if we saw when she's using her quirk, we won't know what was said between them, so it can be anything. Not to mention, Shoto added, she along with her sister and friends are also students of a Hamato. We need to take that into consideration. Her prowess isn't one to be taken lightly. She might just instruct the others what to do and most likely if possible forced her mind to do so, giving her sort of control. And if she has, they'll be able to get out and free. Kaminari understood, though there was still something else. Hey, she doesn't know about what we plan to do. Why don't we just take her first? She can read minds, Ida stated again. I said that. That's how. If you hadn't noticed, the team has been able to avoid and dodge others, including us. She's reading one of our minds. It made sense. Shoto gave it a thought. He realized it made sense. Whenever his team moved in, Izuku's team moved. There was also the times before. Thinking back to the other teams, yeah. He noticed a few times some teams stopped and Izuku's team just raced by them, not even realizing it. It all made sense. It all clicked. She was doing it, April. She's crafty, Shoto summed. If she's been reading one of our minds, then whose? Nearly tempted to make eye contact with her, remembered what Ida said and kept his eyes away and on Izuku. I haven't looked her. Ida did for a second. It must take a few seconds for her get in their mind. Momo, no, Kaminari. He looked at each of his team members. Any one of them could have fall under April's mind reading. If that was the case, then Ida looked to Shoto. Yes, how fast can April scan a person's mind? Do you know? Ida gave it a thought. I am not sure, but it seems rather quick. Then again, he thought of that time she was looking for her sister. It took her some time, but then again they weren't in close proximity of each other. Still, she remained focused on finding her. Through it all, her face slowly wrinkled with exhaustion after some time. He had asked and she told him it was because she jumped to others' mind looking through to see if any one of them had seen her sister or something about her. She had rushed through, which took its toll. Then there was USJ when they fought the villain, when she connected her mind with the others on a plan against the villain. She looked at each of them, though she had trouble for a moment when it came to his mind. Because, I know what to do, Ida presented. I know how to get past her. I'll meet her eyes. Leave it to me. Turning his eyes focused and locked them April. The moment they did, April instinctively scanned his mind. A mistake, she realized. Ida saw it flinch in her eyes. Good, if what he planned will work, then it will surely bring Shoto's team victory with time running out. It was the only way. Everyone, we only have 60 seconds, he announced. I'm about to do something that will make completely useless. Biting back a grunt, April cursed between her teeth. Out of all the members of Shoto's team, Ida had to make eye contact with her and now biting her lip, trying to figure out what the heck he was thinking. He knew she couldn't with her telepathy and she fell for it. With the other members of Shoto's team, they didn't look at her, not even the electric kid. So much for easy street. Sensing April's frustration, Izuku and Yurikara looked to her. April, Yurikara called to her softly, enough for April to hear. What is it? Brows knotted hard and jaw clenched, they received no response from her. Just deep long sighs from her nose. There was one way to get to her. Clearing his throat, Izuku managed to get attention and she understood what he wanted. Connected with him. April, Izuku asked, everything okay? What's wrong? April grunted mentally. Before answering, I can't get a read, I don't have an opening. Ida meet my eyes and well she fumed. His mind is rather well. What she told him shocked Izuku for a moment. I see. Well, will you still be able to? I'm sure. I think so, she responded with a bit of uncertainty in her words. If we stick to the plan, I should be able to. We just have to go on your mark. Then I can give us that push and Toyakami can cover. We should be able to get out. Izuku nodded, swallowed a bit. The plan should work, calculating the amount of time it should hopefully take. The rest of the 60 minutes, even if they only get halfway over. By the time they jump over the Shoto's team and hopefully over the ice wall, the time would run out and they'd be in the clear. It would work. It had to. Everything was riding on it. The same with Ida. He had one shot at this. He had to make it count. Getting into position, eyes straight and focused. Heart racing. Now or never. Forced a powerful torque and RPM from his engines, pushed the power of his determination out. Felt the heated burn of engines. Blasted a burst of speed, propelling Shoto's team like a blur across the distance created by Izuku's team, faster than the eye could see for what it seemed. It came so fast Izuku and the team didn't have time to react. April couldn't get a lock on him. Damn it. Matching his speed, Shoto managed to steal Izuku's headband with ease, taking away all his points and the highest in the processes. April was just stunned. Her breath was literally snatched away by the power she just saw and felt. Her mind was stalled just as Ida's legs had become. The roaring cheering of the crowd brought her senses back and mind back to the event. Okay, the team just got their points stolen. Now they had none. That wasn't good. Time was ticking away faster than ever. If they didn't get the points back or some points, they wouldn't make it to the next round. And she couldn't have that. She and the others promised to make it together. Yeah, they did. At first she mused for a moment, running with her team as they charged Shotos. At first she didn't think much of this whole thing really, but now her blood was pumping more than when she and the others ran across rooftops back in New York. This was a different feeling, the same back in UJS, the moment she stepped off the bus and saw the whole place. How vast it was, how amazing it was. She could hardly sleep that evening, and now this. Yeah, she smirked, pushing harder, holding down a laugh that rose in her throat. She wanted to win this. Not just cause, but it was just amazing. They'd get their points. They'd get them back. The team would claim victory. They'd go to the next event and... Your hand shot out and snatched another headband. You weren't sure how many points it was. You just snatched it, muttering an apology, fastened it around you. So, Jun asked through breaths, how many points do we have? Holding onto his shoulder, you didn't have time to see how many points you both had. So far you and him managed to capture at least 3. Yep, 3, their points. You weren't sure of them. Just hoped it was enough. Jun saw it on your face. So, you don't know. His tongue clicked. That's fine. We'll just have to get another one. We've got. Your eyes dropped a bit. Less than 30 seconds. Lift them to the other teams, throwing themselves around at one another, trying to grab headbands as quickly as they could. Another team tried to do the same with you and Jun. Luckily they didn't get a chance. Jun saw them and stepped back just in time. They narrowly missed. You repelled them away. Before Jun could do anything, his hand lowered, seeing you did it. Smirked to himself. Now down to just 20 seconds, Leo and his brothers had at least 4 headbands. Donnie turned his attention to counting up the points. It was hard with his brothers running and doing their best to avoid others from getting theirs. Also, Raph's yelling didn't help. Having seen all the points, Donnie's mind did the best to count and add them up. With only 3 fingers, there was only so much he could do, muttering to himself over the numbers. Time ticked and ticked away. The pressure was on. Hands swiped. Hands snatched. Hands grabbed. All at once. It was nearly anyone's game. Hearts pumping with exhilaration, about to explode. Time's up. Present Mike announced. And with that, the second round is official over. And just like that, with those words, the second event was over. The results was anyone guess. Those who made it appeared on the screen, and those going to the next round. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 4. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Raven716 on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.